Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, you know, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning into the program. It's Thursday, June the 20th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. David Williams. He's produced the program. Let's get it going. If you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air, 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, it's toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 86. 26. So one more sleep before Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Finals. Of course, Edmonton got back in it with a decisive couple of wins against the Florida Panthers. You know, Connor McDavid's getting all the attention, and rightfully so. The very best hockey player in the world. There's not even really a debate to be had, I don't think. And one player that's not getting as much love is Evan Bouchard, defenseman playing for Edmonton. He's having a banner season, including the Stanley Cup playoffs. So he's third all-time for playoff records, most points by a defenseman. He's got 32. 2 points behind Brian Leetch in that record in the Stanley Cup victory for the Rangers in 94, and 5 points behind Paul Coffey, who set the record of 37 points in the 85 playoffs. But Bouchard is an absolute beauty, and there's going to be a lot of focus in on the Copa America for Canadian soccer fans. Our first a foray into the Copa America tournament, and of course we get World Cup defending champions Argentina, 9:30 Island time tonight. So Alphonso Davies, first time wearing the captain's armband. Of course, that's a big thrill and an honor for Davies. So up against it tonight, but we've got a pretty good squad. And you've heard me talking about the Nations League volleyball. I'm totally into it. And folks, we are positioned to maybe get a podium spot here in volleyball in the upcoming Paris Olympics. So we're spotless record here in the Manila leg of the Nations League volleyball. We're going to make it to the quarterfinals. Yesterday, coming in as number 12 in the world, playing number 9 in the world, Germany, absolutely dismantled them in straight sets. So we've got a nice looking team on that front. And of course, I don't know if you know how popular volleyball actually is in the country. For amateur and minor, volleyball on the girls' side, the most popular sport in the country. Volleyball. How about that? All right. Let's keep going. This is an interesting one. So it was on this date in 1982 that Pete Rose became the 5th major leaguer to play in 3,000 games, joining Ty Cobb, Stan Musial, Hank Aaron, and Karl Yastrzemski. If you look at the Major League Baseball's website, they don't even include Rose in that actual accomplishment. He played over 3,500 games, and probably my favorite sports debate about whether or not Rose belongs in the Hall of Fame. So they don't list Rose, but here are the players who have played in 3,000 games, which is huge. Ricky Henderson, Eddie Murray, Stan Musial, Albert Pujols, Mays, Ripken Jr., and of course the ones that I mentioned. They don't include Pete Rose, but he did indeed do it. And welcome to summer this evening. So the summer solstice is at 6:20 Island time, and of course the summer weather has certainly been part of the conversation this weekend, sweltering out in Central in particular. Humidex is going to be somewhere into the 40s, but then it's going to come back to more moderate and temperate temperatures in the coming days. And of course the pedestrian mall opens today in the downtown core of the city of St. John's on Water Street. You know, I love the downtown, the pedestrian mall. I think it has a really nice summer flair to it, but it doesn't work for every business in that strip. And it doesn't work for some business, say, for instance, on Duckworth Street. So, yes, while it's fantastic for visitors and locals alike in that one stretch of Water Street, and, of course, from noon to 10 p.m. Where there's no traffic, but if you want to take on the pedestrian mall, and I know some business owners personally in the Duckworth Street area that they've long been told there's going to be an expansion of this type of service in the summer, and maybe they could be included in the fun, but as of now, not the case. And we do know with the 7 wildfires that are out of control up in Labrador, all of our equipment, including our 4 water bombers, are in Labrador, and a bunch of helicopters and 25 ground crews, and now Churchill Falls has been evacuated. So some 750 residents and contractors have been told they have to leave Churchill Falls, make their way some 287 kilometers to Happy Valley Goose Bay. So the YMCA is going to be the checkpoint for the evacuees, and then to complicate things further, there's now a power outage in Happy Valley Goose Bay. So I don't know how that complicates the life for the evacuees and those who are on point to try to assist them upon arrival. But there's going to be a small crew who remains behind for the operations at the Churchill Falls Hydro Generating Station. And you know me, loves to talk a little 2041, and thinking that just maybe there's going to be some leaked information, if I read between the lines of some of the Quebec newspapers that I read, is that they continue to talk about it. This province, not so much. Wish for the safety of those remaining behind in Churchill Falls and all the area that's affected by these particular wildfires. So yeah, evacuation orders always brings a scary feature. And the Forestry Department is encouraging people to not have outdoor fires for the obvious reasons. There's going to be some pretty dangerous areas out there, and here's some of the details that you need to be aware of. Okay, so the entire island is under some form of fire hazard index warning. Extreme risk between Eastport and Gander, western Newfoundland from Steadybrook to Cowhead, and from Gullbridge North to Fleur-de-Lis. Southern Labrador also under extreme risk. So here's the thing. Open and outdoor fires are not permitted in areas where the fire hazard index is very high or extreme, as the communities you just heard me say. Burning permits are also invalid in areas where there is high, very high, or extreme hazard warning. So even if you have a burning permit and you're in one of those fire zones, you are not permitted to have an outdoor open fire as of now. Okay. So there's been still plenty of conversation in my email inbox regarding the repatriation of the remains of the unknown soldier. People talk about whether or not there should be some DNA analysis provided so we know exactly who it is. But in essence, and I've heard people also tell these stories, is they like to think that it's their lost loved one. Because that's the essence of what's been taking place there, is those remains are set to represent all who were lost. And there's some 800 of our boys that were lost. There's no known grave. So some of the families that say out loud, look, I like to think that that's my grandfather. And fair ball, because that's the way it's intended to unfold and to be absorbed. But here's a disheartening component here. So we know construction crews, and I drove by some days ago and it's a buzz. I mean, there looked like there were some 36 workers on site, and they say they will indeed hit the timeline for the 100th commemoration on the 1st of July. But apparently, the province has had to hire private security. Why? Graffiti. And I heard the minister say that he used the word graffiti artists, when in fact they can simply be vandals. But if you, and you're listening to the program this morning, or some of your pals are into the world of graffiti, some graffiti in certain spots, I get it. But at the War Memorial, I mean, apparently the graffiti is creeping up against the fences that is protecting the workers on the site at this moment in time. But please, just please, I mean, there's already a graffiti problem. Whether you're walking through Bowring Park or some of the overpasses or underpasses, people tagging businesses, the cost and the pain in the neck that it is to clean up the aftermath. But please, encourage buddies of yours who may indeed be out there with the spray cans to not do it at the War Memorial. Of all things, a little bit of respect can go a long way. But apparently, we're going to hit schedule and budget, $6.5 million spent on that particular site. And if you want to take on any of those aforementioned issues inside that envelope, let's do exactly that. All right, and I do think it's encouraging that they've expanded student travel to Beaumont Hamel. It used to be annually 30 students got to make the trek, and now expanded to 100. I guess that was based on the political entourage that we had over there very recently, and so on returning home decided that we've got to expand it for students, and that's probably an excellent idea. All right, so last day of school for the students. Teachers are back in tomorrow for an admin day, and I think Trent Landing is going to join us for a bit of a recap of how the school year went, and there's just so much to consider inside the world of education. So we'll let Mr. Langdon talk us through his reflection on this particular school year, but we welcome, as you know, I want to talk about education all the time, so we welcome your call on that front. And apparently there's going to be some work done over the summer, talk about expanding the school bus service when the province did away with that arbitrary, foolish rule of 1.6 kilometres away from school before you are allowed to get on a school bus. But they are going to continue to encourage families to avail of the service. So I know some children don't want to be on a school bus for whatever reason, but with the expansion of more and more school buses and the congestion that comes with it, maybe it's something to consider. And of course, we've had some conversations. Some days the show gets taken over by certain topics, and fair ball, that's the way the show works. But 1 or 2 days we had a lot of calls about the safety or the lack thereof of people still so willing to pass a school bus. So whether we talk about the speed cameras in general, and or the possibility for more red light cameras, and the possibility for municipalities to work directly with Service NL to bring cameras to their community, and yes, why not just pull the trigger on this one, put the cameras on the stop signs that are deployed by the school buses when the children are getting on and off. Let's just do it. Why not? Because people apparently are unwilling to abide by the rules and to keep the children safe, which is absolutely mindless in my personal opinion. But let's go ahead and put the cameras right on those stop signs. And if you're caught, we should nail you with the fine. And of course, people don't pay their fines sometime. And you were also up to the conversation regarding the floating of the idea that if you're unwilling to pay your fine, or you can't pay your fine, then you can work off your fine with some community service, including maybe cleaning up some of that graffiti. You want to take it on? Let's go. We've also had plenty of conversations about housing, and I'm totally up for it because it is a concern right across the country. You know, supply is outweighed and outpaced by demand. And so, whether it be for people trying to get into their own home, especially for first-time home buyers, and you've heard me mention this and even ask members of Parliament on the government side about some of the incentives they put in place for first-time home buyers, you know, expanding the amortization years from 25 to 30, the increased ability to borrow from your RRSP, the extended time frame to pay it back, and other types of incentives which would feel good if you're a potential first-time home buyer, but it has the distinct feeling that it's going to make something worse. The crisis is only going to be exacerbated because we're going to amp up demand when we've got a supply problem. So anything on that front, we can do it. And then you talk about vacancy rates and what people might refer to as another bloody crisis, and that's inside the world of rentals. So you hear people reaching out to us trying to find some assistance in getting into a home as a renter, and we're at it all the time. But it's the absolute absence of multi-bedroom units for rent. Even if we're talking about the affordability target, which is generally the rule of thumb, is 30% of your income afforded to housing, whether it be that on your mortgage and or certainly on your rent. So it's a moving target across the country. Of course it is, because rents are vastly different in different parts of the country. But if you're looking for a 3-bedroom in this city, you are out of luck. So there was an evaluation done of some 100 communities across the country. And so here's the numbers for your consideration. And these are just headlines that I picked out of the news story. There are exactly zero 3-bedroom rentals available for $1,600 a month or less in Abbotsford, BC, Guelph, Ontario, Kelowna, BC, Kingston and Oshawa, Ontario, St. John's, Vancouver, and or Victoria. Calgary had 1. So just imagine. Obviously, there's going to be some families in the rental market and unable to get a unit that's suitable to the numbers of people living in the family. Then they're living in these probably very cramped spaces. But for $1,600 a month looking for a 3-bedroom in St. John's? Nope, no such thing. Absolutely zero available, which is a remarkable number. Anyway, let's keep going. I'm not 100% sure what to make of this, but it's being applauded, of course, by organised labour, and that's the fact that it looks like legislation, which has made its way through the Senate, about anti-replacement worker legislation. So people will refer to it as anti-scab legislation, and that's been a favourite reference for many, many people. But it's in federally regulated workplaces. And I had popped up a list here. Okay. So for the public sector, of course, that's the entirety of the federal public sector, Parliament, the Senate, the House of Commons, the Library Parliament, but it also includes plenty of private sectors that are federally regulated. Air transportation, airlines, airports, aerodromes, aircraft operations, banks, grain elevators, grain seed cleaning plants, First Nations councils, federal crown corporations like the Canada Post Corporation, port services, marine shipping, ferries, tunnels, canals, bridges, postal and courier services, radio and television broadcasting, railways that cross provincial borders, road transportation services like trucks and buses that cross provincial borders, telecommunications, telephone, internet, telegraph, cable systems, uranium mining, processing, and any business that's deemed to be vital or essential or integral to the operation of one of the above activities. No replacement workers or no scabs. There are fines up to $100,000 for businesses that violate this pending legislation, just waiting for royal assent. I don't think that's happened quite yet. You know, whether or not you're in favour of it, because it certainly gives a lot of power right back to the workers versus the companies and or the federal government. But here's one thing that I always had a problem with. So there's a strike, and a business wants to keep the doors open, wants to keep working, wants to keep moving, and they bring in replacement workers. And there would be some very contentious and tense interactions or altercations between the strikers and the replacement workers. I get for the strikers thinking, hey, what's the merit of my strike if the company just keeps chugging along? But of course, the replacement workers, they're just poor blokes or lassies looking for a bit of work. I mean, their intention is not to steal your job. Their intention is to try to bring a few bucks in to pay the bills. So I always thought that was understandable, but certainly problematic. In my own personal opinion, I'll be taking a task on that, but so be it. But the anti-replacement legislation making its way through, certainly if you're talking about the applause, organised labour across the country, really quite chuffed with this particular move. All right, a couple of very quick ones before we get to you. All right, I'm going to go back to the INSICOP report. And one more time, the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians. And the political or the politicization of this and the political spin attached to it. And of all people in this country, when we talk about elected members of Parliament bringing a voice of reason to the table, is the Bloc Québécois leader, Yves Blanchet, or Yves Francois Blanchet. Now, a couple of things. I'm always highly sceptical of having federal funds go towards a separatist party, period. But Mr. Blanchet, he's yet to be fully read in. He's just waiting for his final security clearance so he can read the report. And he's pretty clear what he's going to do when he gets a chance to have a look at it. He says if members of his caucus are identified, they'll pay a price, as they should. Other political leaders who have had a look at it haven't said anything along those lines. And also, he said that the way that it's been handled by Green Party leader Elizabeth May and the NDP's Jagmeet Singh, he says they're being irresponsible in their disclosures around the report and what they were allowed to see. So he's also said, there's been invitations for the party leaders, excluding Mr. Poilievre, who refuses to get the security clearance, to get in a room to hash out solutions. Blanchet said, if anyone who's a Bloc member is identified, they'll pay a price. And secondly, after that, he's not going to say a bloody thing. Why? Because that's the right thing to do. And again, of all people, to bring a sense of reason to this conversation is Bloc leader Blanchet. He says it belongs in front of the Hague Commission. He's 100% right. So I would think that it's probably in our best interest, regardless of the party you support, regardless of who you're going to vote for, regardless of who you hate in Ottawa, the politicians that have currently spoke out on it have been ridiculous. I mean, the difference between what Ms. May says versus what Mr. Singh says versus what the Liberals have said versus what the Conservatives have kind of, I guess, tiptoed around the edges of this report. But Blanchet, you're right. Let's get the investigation done. And political spin does not belong in this conversation. So, again, of all people, Yves Blanchet, how bizarre. All right, and very quickly, on this date in history, 2023, on the 20th of June, DFO finally told us what the recreational food fishery dates will be. And I'm guessing we're going to hear that today and or tomorrow because, of course, it's due. I want to leave you with a really good news story before we go. I want to say good morning to Jason, Ryan, and Jeremy Kelly. With the support of their family and friends, they've established a scholarship in the memory of their lost wife and mother. We'll tell you about her now in a second. So there's going to be 2 different years where a $10,000 scholarship is going to be presented. And this year's winner is a woman from Holy Trinity High in Torbay, and her name is Asia Gallant. So when we talk about, this is the Andrea Powell Memorial Scholarship. So $10,000, significant amount of money. And here's directly from Jason. Andrea was a living wife and mother who died suddenly in September of 2017 due to an unknown brain tumor. It was devastating. She was the glue of our family. She shone a light on everyone who knew her. Her giving heart, contagious smile, and love of the small things in life is what made her special. Her kindness, love, and congenial personality will never be forgotten by her family and friends. She was easy, funny, and always friendly. She is also a true superhero who saved the life of another through organ donation. She will always be loved and missed by us. So congratulations to Jason Kelly and the 2 lads for the presentation of this $10,000 scholarship. So it's going to be presented to members, a female student in Ryan and Jeremy Kelly's graduating classes this year in 24, and then for Jeremy in 2028. Let's tell you a little bit about Asia. Okay, a few things about Asia. She's a community volunteer, fire department in Torbay, completed training in overdose naloxone, Pride Committee, Social Justice Committee, Rainbow Riders, just a remarkable social awareness. Congratulations to Asia and to the Kelly family. Bravo. We're on Twitter. We're VOCM Openline. Follow us there. Our email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, let's have a great show. Paul's in the queue to talk about ride sharing. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's begin on the top of the board. Line number 1. Good morning, Paul. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you?
Not bad, I suppose. How about you?
No, good. It's a good day anyway. First day of summer. Kids will be happy.
Lovely.
Yeah, for good. Yeah. Paddy, I'm just calling you about the ride sharing, but before we get into that, yesterday I was listening to your show there at the tail end of it, and there was a gentleman phoned in, Wayne, about the $5 fuel surcharge at the airport.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just so he knows, and I don't know if anybody got in contact with you, you don't, if you phone another cab company, well, Jiffy in particular, they use meter rates back and forth to the airport, right? So the $5 fuel surcharge doesn't apply to us, right?
No, that's why. I mean, one of the Jiffy cab drivers called and said, "Look, if you want to avoid the $5, call another cab company."
Okay, I didn't know yet because I had a customer in the car at the time buying. Like I said, it was at the tail end of your show, and I was going to call, but I didn't think I'd have enough time.
Yeah, no problem.
And another thing is too. I don't know if you see the CBC news there last night about out in Corner Brook where this car lot guy is now offering rides at discount rates over the taxi drivers.
I did see it. It's an interesting story. So, for starters, he's got this, it's called Island Exotic Car Rentals. Got some pretty cool cars for rent. But to increase revenue, he's offering cut rates, but he's kind of tiptoeing around the skirting around the edges of the current regulations as they're understood. So he's offering what they call a chauffeur service. So he doesn't have to abide by some of the regulations that the cab companies do. Consequently, he can offer a much cheaper ride. He increased his insurance coverage from $1 million to $2 million, but that's a fascinating story. I don't know if he's going to get away with it, but it's creative.
Well, I mean, it's like there was no mention of background checks or anything, which I'd like to get into now in a minute. I read that letter of independence, the one from Independent that you were talking about on your show there yesterday. But I mean, the thing is the poor the drivers out there. I know, like you were asking yesterday, you said I hope that the ride sharing guys don't cut into too much of the local taxi drivers. Well, I'll tell you straight hand, I drive 5 days a week. Our rates are down between 35 and 40% since they started.
Is that right, eh? Ooh.
Oh yeah, big time. We've got drivers. I had buddies of mine, Paddy. I've been involved in this for the last 42 years, in and out. I've been back at it full time since 2019. Since I came back, since this all started, in the last what am I going to say? Probably 8 to 10 weeks, we've lost probably 6 to 8 drivers that have been at it for years and years and years. It's just not feasible for them anymore with the insurance rates and everything, right? So it is taking a toll on us. But the thing is this guy out there and the drivers in Corner Brook, my heart goes out to him, right? It's a job to make a buck at it is. And I mean, this is our tourism season, and this is what this is when we get to make, like the fishermen, right? You got a season, and there's good and bad, right? So when you got to make it, you got to make it, and you got to put it away for a rainy day. But it's not there right now for a lot of people, right? But I want to get back to this letter that they had here about the vulnerable sector check. Like the transportation, the government came up with, I don't know, some kind of organization, I guess the Transportation Network Company regulations. Is that correct?
Yep, that was a part of amending the Highway Traffic Act. That's right. That's right.
So they amended the Highway Traffic Act. So in that Amendment Act, before any company, ride-sharing company, was licensed, from what I read, I looked it up, and other than the letter, you had to present the motor vehicle registration. You need a driver's abstract, list of your drivers, criminal background checks, address, and a driver's abstract before a license was issued. That's my understanding of that. Now, that's from what's her name, Krista Cull. She's the Deputy Minister of Motor Vehicle Registration, right? So this is how if you were applying for a road-sharing license, a ride-sharing, this is what you had to have before the license was issued. All this, when Uber was the first one, I guess, well, no, the first one, we know where that went, with Red Sea ride-sharing. Okay, so obviously it wasn't done there. And it wasn't done when Uber got their license either, because where have I got it to here? Darren Green from the RNC, he looked into it and he said there were discrepancies about the letter that was submitted, the license that was submitted. Krista Cull contacted Gail Boland. She's the Assistant Deputy Minister for Services NL. Told her there was multiple items missing in the application. And then on April the 12th, even though these issues weren't met, and Darren Green contacted Boland and never got no response from her, on April the 12th, Studley authorised motor vehicle registration to accept ISB Global Internationals to accept their background checks on the people, right?
Yep.
When there was, there's no vulnerability check on these drivers, and you read the letter as well as I did, I guess. So Lynn Moore states that ISB Global they're not a reputable company to be authorising criminal background checks for these ride-sharing companies.
It should be solely in the hands of the RNC, as far as I'm concerned. And so here, just so people know the difference between the criminal background check and the vulnerable sector check. So the RNC says they conduct a vulnerable sector check for those, quote, applying for a position with a person or organisation responsible for the well-being of one or more children or vulnerable persons. If the position is one of authority or trust relative to those children or vulnerable persons, and the applicant wishes to consent to a search being made in criminal conviction records to determine if the applicant has been convicted of a sexual offence listed in the schedule to the Federal Criminals Record Act and has been pardoned. So there's the high likelihood that there will indeed be children at some point riding in the back of a ride-sharing car. So now the current status is, if the force is going to conduct a vulnerable sector check, it's only going to be at the employer's request and the applicant's consent. We can do away with that. We can avoid that. We can just say you have to do both. And why not?
Well, that's what I say, Paddy. Like, you know, what's good for the goose is good for the goose, right? All the taxi drivers got to get it done, right? So my thing is that if there's nothing to hide, just go do it. And because they want a fair competitive market, according to Mr. Fury, right? It works in other provinces. It works in other cities. They obviously didn't do their homework about other provinces and other cities, because in Toronto in June, there was a fellow from ride-sharing company sent to 5.5 years in prison because of there's no vulnerable background checks. He was sent to 5.5 years in prison for sexual charges. December in Whitby, Ontario, Uber, right? Again, they were charged with sexual assaults, right across. And you've seen in that letter from that independent CK, there's one there on the go in, I believe, it was in Manitoba. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe that's right.
Right? So now this is going to be a Canada-wide one. The Canada-wide Consumer Law Group of Canada, they're going to do a Canadian-wide lawsuit, class action lawsuit against Uber and ride sharing because of this vulnerable background checks for all the sexual assaults, because it happens everywhere. But my thing is why in the name of God would the Liberal government approve all of this stuff, right? Before and not follow the same records they did for the taxi companies. But they're hurting the taxi company big time. I might be the only fellow calling and complaining about it, but I listen to it day in and day out from all the other drivers and everything else. And I tell the drivers, call in, tell them what's on the go, right? Because the government's not going to listen to you anyway. You heard the lady on yesterday about Fogo and stuff like that. They make up these rules and they say that's it, you follow them, or so sad, too bad, right? That's the way it seems. So if they want the ride sharing and everything here, put it on the same field as the taxi drivers and see how long they last. Just have them pay the rates and have them pay the insurance and everything else. I'm not saying no competition, because there's been competition in the taxi industry all my life. Is like, there's one thing about us. There's people who drive taxis and there's taxi drivers. The taxi drivers will stay afloat. I guarantee you that. Right? That's one thing about it.
Well, certainly hope so. Paul, anything else quick before I got to get to a break?
Yeah, just to let you know, just very quick, in Ottawa now, I don't know if you read this one, more than likely you did, Markway, Canadian Taximen's Association, Ottawa just won a $215 million lawsuit against Ottawa for allowing ride-sharing in there and not following the same rules. And, just to let you know, like, all these taxi drivers, there's about 2,000 of us full and part-time drivers, right? And our Liberal government has let us down big time because they did what they did. They overruled everything to let ride-sharing get in here. And a lot of it was to try to get them to sponsor the Canada Games, which was in that letter, but they never got it, right? But what I said, they pushed everything ahead so fast, and now they're going to pay for it like they did on the first license they issued. Because all these drivers, eventually we're all going to get together and figure this out. We got families, we got our children and everybody else, and a lot of us, between all of us, I'd say there's about 4,000 voters involved. And I'm just asking everybody out there that's involved in the taxi industry and everything else, don't vote for the Liberals because they did nothing for us.
I appreciate the time, Paul. Thanks for the call.
Yeah, thanks very much, Fatty. Have yourself a good day.
You too, pal. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I mean, this is an easy one to rectify. Just simply change the rules. I mean, it's not arduous. And if we're talking about a level playing field and fairness across the board, there's no good argument against not having a vulnerable sector check for someone who's going to be driving a ride-sharing car. Is there? A ride-sharing vehicle. Let's take a break. When we come back, Ross is there to talk about Canada Post. We're going to talk about mental health in the workplace, the repatriation of the unknown soldier, and whatever you want to talk about right after this. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Ross, you're on the air.
Hi, Paddy. I recently been mailing out some video productions that I've done to customers and bringing them to the post station A on Kenmount Road. And I'm getting, been starting to get phone calls from people saying, when is the video being mailed out? That's well, they were actually mailed out 2 weeks ago or a week ago, whatever time frame it was at the time. And then I'm getting phone calls back from the same people saying, oh, I just received it. And on average, it's between 2 and 4 weeks for a USB stick to be delivered from Kenmount Road to a place like Kenmount Terrace. And so I've been inquiring recently with different workers at the front line there at Kenmount Road Station and some individual workers that I know that work at Canada Post. And what's being told to me is crazy. It's basically as people are retiring, they're not replacing the worker. They're dividing the workload of that person to other workers. And an example that was given to me was a Canada Post delivery worker might have 900 homes on their route normally. Some of those people now have 1,600, and so it's taking longer for them to get the routes, the mail delivered, and in most cases, each person don't get the full day delivered by the time the day is over. So what's not delivered goes back to the postal station A, then gets put on the back of the line for distribution for the next mail day, but it's not going to go into tomorrow's mail because today's mail that didn't get delivered, tomorrow's mail is already assigned and bundled and ready to be to go out the next day. So there's a backlog of mail galore apparently in the Kenmount Station A, and this has been ongoing now for a couple of months. And I mean, the rates recently have gone up with, parcels and regular letters and so on, but the service has been dropping back. And, the workers are overworked, and it's just, the general public, I don't think, know this, but I mean, it's affecting me because customers are calling me complaining, well, you said you were putting in the mail tomorrow, or that was 3 weeks ago and I haven't got it yet. And I was beginning to think that, because I'm using small bubble envelopes to fit the size of the package, that maybe it's getting lost. So I started sending out a second video to people thinking that it was my fault. I use a small bubble envelope, which is regulation size for Canada Post. Sure. And now I'm finding out that people are, call me, and say, I got one, but the postal stamp, the cancel post mark on the stamp is like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago.
I've heard this story repeatedly in the last few weeks. So the fact of the matter is, I'm not surprised. I mean, Canada Post, it was about a month or so ago that they reported a loss of $748 million pre-tax in 2023. So they've been losing money since 2018 constantly and have lost over $3 billion since 2018. Letter mailing peaked about 20 years ago or so, and last year they sent about a couple of billion letters via the mail, and the slowdown is going to be real. So I know they're losing money, but when people have real legitimate skeptical concerns regarding the timeliness of mail getting delivered, they're going to lose even more money because people aren't going to trust them. They're going to use a courier.
Exactly. I mean, I wasn't aware until I started inquiring about my own, and just I guess a lot of people out there, and even the workers I spoke to said, I mean, some of the mail is being delayed by a week or so, or EI and Canada Pension or welfare for those who are not getting it direct deposit.
Oh yeah, it's going to jeopardize all sorts of areas, no doubt about it. So Canada Post has a problem, and they're making it worse.
Yeah. If that's all on that topic, I just want to make a comment on the ride share. My feeling about it is keep things local. All taxi cabs are locally owned, so any money gets paid to the ride, gets shared between the cab owner and the driver. The unfortunate thing about the ride share, it might be saving a few dollars in the pocket of the rider, but the profit is going to the corporates away from here. So slowly but surely, money is seeping out of Newfoundland's pockets and going to mainland, and this applies also, in my opinion, to anybody who's using the food delivery systems. I mean, they're all internationally owned as opposed to locally owned, and so some of the money is staying with the driver, but the profit is going to the big corporations outside Newfoundland.
Yeah, and one of the cab drivers, Paul, who started the program this morning, he said, and I think he's right, you're not going to see Uber sponsoring a minor soccer team, but you might see Jiffy. Anyway.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I don't want to be a hypocrite because when we travel, we almost exclusively use Uber. You know, just got used to it after a while because, you know, it was just that the difference of knowing what you had booked and the type of vehicle you're in and exactly how much it was going to cost. It just became something that was a go-to. You know, we'd arrive in Toronto, bang, use an Uber. But you're right, the money does flow out of the province when we talk about ride sharing. Now, not all ride sharing is the same because some of the ride sharing applications have been locally created and the money will stay here. But Uber in particular, you're right. What you said is absolutely spot on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for your time and enjoy the hot day.
The very same to you, Ross. Thank you. All right, take good care. Bye-bye. All right, let's keep rolling here. Let's say good morning to the co-founder of Stigma Zero. That's Jason Finucane, joining us on line number 3. Jason, you're on the air.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you doing?
Doing well, thanks. How about you?
Doing very well. If you don't mind, I'll just correct one thing. I'm actually the founder of Stigma Zero.
Oh, pardon me, because when I had a quick look, I thought it said you were a co-founder with a gentleman named Ryland McKinley, but my apologies.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, no. I founded it, and then Ryland came on board after. That's all.
Okay.
So the reason I'm calling is actually regarding an email that was sent by Glenn Royal. Oh.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. I thought we cut off for a second. The email, I'm not sure if you're aware of it. First of all, let me just quantify who Glenn is. Glenn Royal is, I think, known to you. He's a Newfoundlander. He's a well-known and very well-awarded mental health advocate. He's worked tirelessly for many, many years in the Newfoundland area and specifically on projects related to mental health, both in society and in the workplace. I've had the pleasure of working with Glenn in his capacity as a referral partner for my company, Stigma Zero. And in that role, Glenn recently sent an email to Deputy Premier and Minister of Finance, Siobhan Cody. And the email was titled, "A Critical and Urgent Message to the Core Government Departments, as well as agencies, boards, and commissions." And it's for that reason that I'm calling in.
I'm familiar with Glenn and his work, absolutely.
Yeah, excellent. So really what I wanted to say was there is a crisis right now, societally, but specifically in our governments in Canada with regards to workplace mental health and, more importantly, workplace mental illness. And all of this is occurring because of one simple problem. We still have stigma towards mental illness, even though it's 2024, even though we have come a long way when it comes to our understanding of mental health, our understanding of what mental illnesses are. The simple fact is this. Every day, people suffer from clinical depression, bipolar disorder, anxiety disorders, schizophrenia, any of those things, and their reaction to those illnesses is instinctively to hide, to deny treatment, to try to soldier on and work through it. And these are actions that would never happen if any of these people were diagnosed with any other illness. If I was diagnosed tomorrow with prostate cancer, I sure as heck wouldn't feel any shame. I wouldn't be afraid of any stigma, and I sure would follow up with my doctors and do whatever I was told to do, take whatever medication they gave me, do whatever surgery they offered me, and it would be logical and it would be as fast as possible. But because it's a mental illness, people get scared of the judgment they may receive. Certainly in the workplace, they are very scared of any recriminations they may receive. It might hurt their career. And so people hide their illness and they try to work through it. And this is dangerous, particularly with clinical depression, because it can lead to death by suicide. And part of what we discuss in this email that Glenn sent is specifically an individual, I don't know the name of the person and I don't wish to name the person, but a person in the government in a high-level position after already attempting suicide and thankfully failing. Unfortunately, this individual attempted suicide again and succeeded. She died by suicide. And I believe, and I will state this firmly, she would still be alive today if our society and our workplaces were handling mental illness properly, because she wouldn't have felt that she couldn't get help. She would have known that not only could help be gotten, but she wouldn't be judged, wouldn't suffer any recriminations for seeking that help. And so this is not a nice to have, let's all get better at understanding mental illness. This is a critical current crisis that we need to respond to, because people are dying every day. It's totally needless. So I founded Stigma Zero, which is a workplace mental health training firm. We offer online training. We offer live training. I also deliver inspirational keynotes. All of this is delivered through the prism of my personal experience with both physical and mental illness. I had a major heart defect as a young child, and then in my 20s I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which I live with to this day, and I manage every day. And the simple fact is this: I overcame stigma only because I had experience with physical illness, and I was able to make the connection or make the comparison between simply, what did I do when I had a heart defect? Did I feel fear, shame, stigma? Did I hide the illness? Did I try to work through it? Or did I react logically? And did I end up following doctor's advice? And ultimately, I had open heart surgery to correct it. That's what I did with that. But when I became ill with bipolar, I fell into the very trap I am trying to help everyone solve right now. I fell into a major hole because of stigma. I refused to even admit that I might have a mental illness. I wouldn't even consider the idea of treatment like a medication. And I sure as heck wouldn't talk to my boss about it or my colleagues about it. And one day, I'll admit, it took me 3 years of suffering like this. But ultimately, I asked myself a very simple question. What would I have done at 26 years old as a professional if my heart defect had come back? Well, I would have done everything differently. As I just said earlier, I would have sought medical attention. I would have told my boss. I would have told my colleagues. I would have felt zero stigma and zero shame. I would have simply acted normally the way we all do when facing an illness. What I am trying to do with Stigma Zero, what Glenn is trying to do in working with Stigma Zero and in all his work outside of Stigma Zero, we are trying to help advance our society to a place where the response to mental illness is equivalent to the response to all physical illnesses. When we do that, the rate of suicide will decline dramatically, because suicide happens when a person is suffering so much from their illness that they see no other option. And I believe people won't get to that critical place if our society provides the support that it needs and eliminates the stigma. That's why I called it.
Sure, and I appreciate it. We speak about this exact topic a lot on this program for the very same reasons that you articulate. You know, the more we normalize the conversation, the better things will be. More people will be more willing to come forward to get the help they need, to have open and honest conversations with their colleagues and their family and their friends. And I mean, I think this is a critically important topic, but not to be cold, but let's just boil it back to some incentives for employers, including government agencies and or private sector. This company does a great job. There's an open door policy, lots of programs and support that people can avail of. There doesn't seem to be much in the way of that type of stigma, you know, hanging over our heads in this building. Well, I hope it's that way. But let's just talk dollars and cents. I mean, for employers who are not mindful of and have programs to assist folks who need help and are constantly and frequently reaching out to their employees and saying, look, if you need it, I'm here. If you need it, I have a program. Because if you don't, then you'll have issues that jeopardize the actual bottom line and the cost of operations, whether it be government or the private sector. Productivity goes down, lost days go up, and consequently, it costs more to operate as opposed to be pragmatic and open and honest and welcoming, that if it's a mental health concern that you have, we have something for you. It's good for everybody. It's good for the employee, it's good for the business, it's good for operations, it's good for profit. I mean, there's just no good reason to not have these programs constantly available and every employee knows where they are and how to access them.
So let me say this to you, sir. That was so well articulated. I have been doing my work for over 10 years, and a big part of my job is to do exactly what you just did, explain the benefit to the bottom line, because unfortunately we do live in a society that is driven by the very simple fact that, we're operating in an economy and we need to make profit. We need to run our businesses fiscally efficiently. But let me say this. You just articulated that as well as I ever have. That is impressive, and I appreciated it. The simple truth is this. Everything you just said is correct. I'm going to add one thing you didn't mention, presenteeism. So absenteeism is when an individual takes a day off work due to illness. Doesn't matter if that illness is a flu or it's depression. That's when a person simply cannot be in their workplace. Presenteeism is a much worse problem with respect to mental illness in the workplace. And what it means, just for the folks who don't know that word, presenteeism is when an individual has an illness that they do not disclose, that they hide, and they try to work through. So they actually show up to work, but they're really working between, say, 50 and 70% productivity levels. They are essentially working impaired, and it is going under the radar. That is the actual largest factor in the loss of profits, the loss of productivity, the loss of revenue, the waste that occurs as a result of workplace mental illness. It's actually hidden in the people trying to soldier on. And here's what happens. If we give people the freedom, and I hope your workplace is one of those leaders that is doing it correctly. It sounds like you're doing a great job. But if we give people the freedom from stigma, from discrimination, from judgment, that allows them to treat their illness, clinical depression, for example, the same as they would treat their illness, cancer, for example, they will actually take time off work earlier in order to treat their illness earlier, which will have them recover earlier and get back to work to 100% productivity. That's the cycle we need to get to, instead of years of working at 70% productivity under the radar while a person is suffering. That's not only bad for business, it's not only bad economically, but it's exactly what leads a person slowly and steadily towards a critical place that could lead to suicide.
Jason, appreciate your time. Thanks for making time for the program.
I thank you for letting me come on, and again, thank you very much for how you articulated it from your point of view, and I congratulate you and your workplace for how well you're handling it.
Stay in touch, Jason. Thanks for the time.
I will do. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Jason Finucane with Stigma Zero. The website's an easy one. It's stigmazero.com. Let's take a break. When we come back, Peter's here to talk about the repatriation of the remains of the unknown soldier. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 4. Good morning, Peter. You're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Patty. How you doing?
I'm doing okay, thank you. How about you?
Not too bad. I attended the recent funeral procession of the unknown soldier, and I was interviewed by NTD and CBC.
Okay.
And I mentioned an idea of the high school bringing in a criteria that deals with our war heroes, because I feel that our young people don't know enough about our war heroes. If you ask them what is the Blue Petite, they will know what that is, or the Newfoundland Regiment. And I feel that our high school system need to be given a history lesson, and I would like to find out how would I go about to do this. Would I go to the leader of the I've been talking to Tony Wakeham about it, and of course I can't get a hold. I'll get a hold to Crystal Howell, because I know she's the education minister. So how would I go about to float this idea?
Well, a couple of things. Do you happen to know what is included in the history curriculum, especially when we talk about, say, for instance, grade 6 up?
Probably I don't, because I'm up there in age-wise, and I probably don't. It's been quite a few years since I was in school, so. But I guess I could start from there, yes. Because I was at the war memorial there, and there were these two gentlemen was there. They were there to honor one with their grandfather and one with their great grandfather. It was on the news. They had a shirt there said my grandfather was in the blue petites, and the young fella had on said my great grandfather was in the blue petite, which was nice to see. At least but they were only doing that because of personal being personally involved. Being their family member. That's like myself. Everybody in Newfoundland got somebody that fought in the war to some degree. And I feel that our high school students, I'm glad to hear that the government is increasing it to 100 people now to go over to Beaumont Hamel, which is great. And I think that's a good idea about that. And I feel that the high school system could use a bit more, like in the criteria. I don't know if you remember or not. Remember back in the old days, they used to have prayers in the school system. They don't even do that no more now because of this denomination aspect of it.
Yep.
And I feel that it's too much been taken out of the high school. And I feel that the high school needs to, get a bit of a history lesson, in different things, And our war heroes, like the adult gentleman that was on earlier this morning, they wouldn't have the freedom to speak about things if it wasn't for our war heroes. They're the ones that gave us our freedom. They're the ones that went and shed their blood for us. And I feel very strongly about our war heroes.
Fair enough, Peter. I can tell you that there is certainly in some of the history courses and social studies, especially in high school, there is curriculum associated with the First World War, the Blue Petits, Beaumont Hamel, all these types of things are indeed addressed. Whether or not it's to the extent that you'd like to see, I really don't know. But you can indeed find what's in the curriculum. If you just go to Google and try to find Newfoundland Labrador schools high school history curriculum, you'll find a document and you'll be able to satisfy yourself as to whether or not you think it's done and covered enough. And of course, you're right, Crystal Howell, as the Minister of Education, her department is responsible for the development of curriculum. There's a variety of working groups that congregate over the summer to work on the development of new curriculum. And so that would be a committee that would be responsible for considering what you're proposing. So you do have to go through the Minister's office. There's no real other point of contact that I think is more appropriate than that office. So that's what I would do if I was you. And if someone belonged to the Minister's office is listening this morning and you've seen any communication from Peter, please do get back to him and just give him an idea of what next steps need to be. How's that?
That's great. And I also sent you an email to your email as well, because I didn't know if I was going to get through back to you in time.
Yep.
So I got an email sent to you as well.
I replied.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, your surname begins with a P, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I replied and said your call is welcome. That's why I thought you called so quickly. So do that, and if you don't have any success, then email me back and we'll see if we can figure something out.
Okay, I will.
Appreciate your time. Good luck.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, Peter. Bye-bye. All right, let's take a break for the news. When we come back, Trent Langdon, of course, is the president of the NLTA. He's there, and Bonnie Learning's with the SPCA board. She's the VP up in Happy Valley Goose Bay. And then for all the rest of you, Amir, I believe it's his 9th call of the program, if I remember correctly. Amir's there, Sarah, and then Jennifer Sainsbury. We mentioned the fact that Asia Glant won the Andrea Powell Memorial Award. She goes to Holy Trinity, I believe, in Torbay. The mother, Jennifer Sainsbury, is also there. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 6. Say good morning to the Vice President of the SPCA board up in Happy Valley Goose Bay. That's Bonnie Learning. Good morning, Bonnie. You're on the air.
Hi, Penny. How are you?
I'm excellent this morning, thanks. How about you?
Oh, a bit tired.
I hear you.
It was pretty wild there last evening at the YMCA. I got to say, it was but you know what? It was run quite smoothly and efficiently for something that was so kind of last minute and chaotic. So everything went, I think, fairly well.
Is the power back on?
I think it's still up in the MOT area here of Goose Bay this morning.
Yeah, so apparently a tree got tangled in some lines and brought them down, and of course a power outage affecting some in your area. So describe the scene at the YMCA, because we know some 750 contractors and residents of Churchill Falls were evacuated, headed your way, some 300 kilometres away. Paint us a picture.
Yeah, so last night, from our perspective, from the SPCA perspective, so we were made aware about 7:45 last evening that the community of Churchill Falls had been evacuated, and a lot of them were headed to Goose Bay and advised to come to Goose Bay. So we put out an emergency call for emergency fosters for anyone that might be coming with a pet and might not have somewhere to go with it. And we got a fantastic response. We had almost 30 people, within a span of an hour, sign up to be an emergency foster. So we went to the shelter and picked up some supplies in case anyone didn't have time to grab them before they came over. Went down to the Y. We were down there by 10 to 10 last evening, and we set up camp there. And when people came in, if they had a pet, they would come over, they would be directed to our table. We would go through our foster list. We would match them up with a foster, and we would transport that animal to the foster home. And we never got out of there. I think we left around 1:30 this morning, and it went fairly smoothly. Now, having said that, for the amount of people that came through and the amount of animals we saw, we placed about 12 cats and 2 dogs. A lot of people decided to stay in their vehicles with their dogs because they didn't want to stress them out, putting them in a an unfamiliar environment, out of the blue. So that was fine. And a lot of people, I think, had friends or family to stay with as well. So, but we did what we could, and we're still available for anyone who might need us in the next 24, 48 hours, or however long they may be here.
Yeah, and who knows how long it's going to be, because the fires are the furthest thing from under control. So is everybody's pet that made their way in going to be accommodated? Everything's okay?
Well, everything is okay as of right now. I did make an updated post this morning from our SPCA group, just letting people know, that we're still available for anyone needing foster care for their animals. And it's been pretty quiet. So I'm assuming everyone is okay right now. But again, we're here if anyone should need us.
Good on you, Bonnie. Anything else you want to offer this morning while we have you?
No, that's pretty much it. Just like to thank everyone who's helping out with the emergency response. It's good to see the community pull together and help our neighbours there from Churchill Falls. So I just wish everyone well, and I hope everyone from Churchill Falls can get back home as soon as possible.
100%. Thanks for making time for the show, Bonnie. Stay in touch.
Thanks, will do. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye. It's Bonnie Learning with the SPCA up in Happy Valley, Goose Bay. Let's go to line number 3. Say good morning to the president of the Newfoundland Labrador Teachers Association. That's Trent Langdon. Trent, you're on the air.
Hey, good morning, Paddy. How you been?
Best kind. How about you?
Oh, doing well, thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to call in and figure I'd do a quick recap in a couple minutes of the year.
Yeah, when we talk education, I don't even know where to start. There's just so much, and I try to keep it all on the front burner. But let's just start with what hasn't got a whole lot of attention versus, say, for instance, the Health Accord, is the Education Accord. Have you been brought into the fold with Drs. Burke and Goodnow, who I believe are the co-chairs of this effort?
Yeah, absolutely. So we sit on the advisory committee, and we've been consulted. Just this past week, actually, we did a presentation to the Education Accord. The Accord has 4 pillars, but not all 4 apply to the K-12 system. It's the well-being one and so on that apply. But you're talking early education right on to post-secondary. So it's the full gamut of education, and people need to be aware that it's not simply the K-12 system.
Fair enough. And, there's going to be a lot of work done, whether it be short-term, medium-term, or long-term solutions that are required in modernizing, whatever that exactly means, inside the world of education. So when we reflect on this year, and I think there's some problems that will be persistent or year over year, but some there's a spike. So help us understand how the conversation sounds with the Department of Education about the stories you brought forward regarding the prevalence of violence, and how did the school year wind up? Did it get any better, get any worse, and what's the department have to say?
Yeah, not an easy fix to this one, Paddy. This is one that, and I spoke this morning on the morning show there. These are societal issues that are finding their way into our classrooms. We're feeling it as teachers. The schools are doing their best to meet the individual needs of students that are coming through. But when you see crime on the rise in the province, you see domestic violence on the rise, and you see all those other pressures, just the cost of living and so on, they make their way into the classrooms. And whether that's related to mental health or just overall anxiety and or other types of interactions that are quite negative in the system. I guess the best way I can explain this is a work in progress. And so we're working with government to try and find ways. We've been advocating for years to increase the mental health supports that are there. We're now sitting at the table, which was initiated by the NLTA, by the way, to do a school safety coalition. We're meeting for the third time now next week. This coalition includes government, justice, health, education, and children, senior, social development. The two policing agencies, there's Indigenous representation there, Federation of School Council. So we need these people here to come to some long-term solutions. Some quick fixes, I do believe, are increasing the number of guidance counselors and educational psychologists that are in the system. I do believe that use of alternate schools in this province is underutilized. I think that's something that in some cases when certain students are not meeting with success in their schools, that these alternate settings might be best for them and for the other students in those buildings. So those are things, as far as I'm concerned, that can be implemented pretty quick, and with long-term intentions of improving the violence we're seeing and just the overall safety in our schools.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know where the answer lies either, but the big problem has been, because we have to almost stop using the word bullying, because when it's an act of violence, let's call it exactly that. There was a story in the news this week talk about the fact that this one lady, 10 years after she's graduated from high school, is still quote unquote haunted by what happened from grade 1 right through grade 12. So then she went on to talk about it became even worse when the social media advent came upon, and of course then it wasn't school hours where you were bullied and or attacked. It was all the time. And so that leads me to the whole cell phone conversation. I know you talk and acknowledge the distraction that it presents, but I would suggest it's worse than that. And I don't know if we have enough pragmatic conversations with students as a captive audience about just how your words matter. I saw a really interesting presentation from it was a primary school teacher, I believe it was in Minnesota, talk about the fact that if you can't say something that could be rectified in 30 seconds, such as you have a bit of lint on your shirt, or your fly is down, or your shoe is untied, if they can't fix it in 30 seconds, don't say it. To talk about people's hair and their body type and their skin and their clothes and all those types of things, we can't do anything about it. I'm not so sure we've even approached it, as factually or as fundamentally as that. We'll wear a pink shirt, we'll talk about being kind, and then it kind of goes away.
Yeah, and you certainly open a powder keg in that intro there. Bottom line for us, is we know schools are about relationships, and my own experience, I'm better to students when I'm available to them. And if I have double the number of students in my care that I should have, that reduces the amount of time I'll have one-on-one. And every teacher in this province, if they had more one-on-one time or more time with smaller groups of children, they could build those bonds, build those relationships. And I know when a child walks through the school, if they're having a rough day, because I see them every single day, and I got my thumb on the pulse. But I've also, when I see a kid mistreating another student, I will pull them inside, and it gets very stern at times, and say, what are you doing? And you keep track of those things. But if you have numbers in our schools that are too large, you can't keep track of everything that's going on. Plus, those relationships are nowhere near as strong. So it comes down to, in this province, what is it we're doing in terms of prioritizing education as being, okay, we're going to have ratios such that teachers can build those relationships with those students. And by virtue of doing that, you're addressing food issues, food security issues, you're addressing bullying, you're addressing violence in schools, you're addressing mental health, you're addressing all this stuff by virtue of simple availability of teachers to students. And right now, because of the ratios we have of class sizes, because of the shortages of teachers, and often there's substitutes in there, those relationships are nowhere near as strong as they've been. And to go back to the point we often say is, we always remember our most favorite teacher, mostly because they made us feel safe. And so right now, schools are not as safe as they once were. And that's our approach from day one, is if you get the nuts and bolts right, and you say it yourself, Patty, I say it all the time, if you get education right, but if you get the nuts and bolts right of the basics of ratios and the ability to build relationships with students, it's all those other things, you'll eventually be able to get to them.
100%. Also, this is another big conversation, but it's got to be attended to. We've changed the way we assess where a child is, talk about public exams and what have you, and there's a big conversation as to whether or not that's the right idea, considering that entering into post-secondary presents a problem. Yep. But the trend since 2003, and further exacerbated during the pandemic, is the steady decline in math, reading, and science scores. And that is a huge concern. And I don't even hear the minister necessarily talking about it. Have you broached this issue? Because it's time to go back to the drawing board. Because what we're currently doing, for some reason, whether it be with how the curriculum is devised, delivered, the testing approach, or whatever the case may be, because we're like 2 years behind the rest of the country and other countries around the world when we come to things like math, which can't continue as far as I'm concerned. So has that conversation been entertained with any satisfaction?
Well, it's certainly been entertained. Satisfaction is another discussion, but I think everybody's aware. I'll put it there, is everyone in government is fully aware that the scores we're seeing in math and reading are not where they should be. It's got to do with everything I just described earlier. We're very concerned that the accountability of students is in question right now. When they're not getting the skills they need to do testing. I'm not a fan of widespread testing anyway, but there's a balance between putting children in situations where they're expected to perform, but also a balance of experience and intensive supports in different areas. That it's about accountability, and it's about giving them experiential opportunities that moving forward, when they go to post-secondary, that they can walk into an exam room and still be fine, but they can also walk into a social setting and into other settings, their first work experience, for example, whereby it's not as simple as getting second, third, fourth, and fifth chances. That's not the way the world works. So I do think there needs to be an increase in accountability, but I am not a fan of just this widespread testing approach where if you fail one test and you're done. I'm not a fan of that. So somewhere in the middle is where it needs to be. But everything I just said in this particular conversation and the one before is interlinked to the point that we got to find ways to better support our children and have our expectations to make them accountable.
Yeah, and what that looks like, once again, I don't know. We've had the cell phone conversation. A birdie or two or three has whispered in my ear that there's some policy being developed over the summer about how we're going to address cell phone usage in school. I know it can be helpful when delivering curriculum. And I know there's a place for technology in the classroom. And I know that you don't want the teachers to be overburdened and fully responsible and have all the liability about controlling students' phones. But there might be just some pretty easy things to do here. It might not have to be collect everybody's phone at the beginning of the day and assume the responsibility if and when it's something that gets lost or damaged. Maybe like a 3-strike rule. If you are caught with your phone out when it's not asked for by the teacher, you get a strike. If you're on your 3rd strike, then you have to pass over the phone every single time. So not every kid will have their phone taken by the teacher, but ones who refuse to play along to avoid that distraction will just take the phone.
Right, and what the public needs to realize, Patty, is that a lot of schools are doing exactly that already. And so any type of legislation or policy that comes through has to be done in consult with us and with the members to see what has worked, what is not. Because if you come in with sweeping changes, and then you don't want to throw the baby with the bathwater, so to speak. There have been successful schools. Many administrators out there I've heard from, they said, look, we're making it work in our buildings, and there's others that are struggling with it. So they could certainly use some support. I don't think it's as simple as a zero tolerance outright ban, because when does that ever work for anything? So there needs to be a middle ground here where we do avail of tech. But like anything, Patty, if someone misuses their freedom to do something, they lose it. And that's where this really needs to come down to, is that if you misuse it, you lose it. But also if it interferes with learning and interferes, and that's the other piece around math and reading scores. It's proven in studies I've read that the cell phone distraction alone is having impact on overall achievement. So, very detailed conversation on the last day, but it's heavy.
It is, but we got to start with the heavy stuff. The easy stuff is exactly that. It's the easy stuff for a reason.
Agreed.
I appreciate the time, Trent. Anything else quick before we say goodbye?
Yeah, very quick. I just want to say thank you to the teachers of the province and the teaching and learning assistants, and to the students. My God, please be safe. All we want is you to be back in September, full-fledged in one piece, and hit the ground running again. So please be safe and all the best.
Same to you, Trent. Stay in touch. Have a nice summer.
Thanks. You as well, man. All right.
Take care. Bye-bye. Trent Langdon, NLTA president. We'll stick with education when we come back on line number 5. Say good morning to Jennifer Sainsbury. Her daughter was awarded a $10,000 scholarship yesterday, the Andrea Powell Memorial Award. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 5. Good morning, Jennifer Sainsbury. You're on the air.
Hi, how are you?
I'm excellent. Thanks for asking. How about you?
I'm wonderful. I just heard you talking about my daughter, actually. She was the one who received the Andrea Powell Memorial Award last night at Holy Trinity High. It was a big accomplishment, I guess, after working so hard all through high school and her whole life, really. She's been quite driven, and when she gets something in her head that she wants to pursue, then she does it. And she's been involved a lot in the community, and she decided she wanted to do paramedicine. And one of the requirements, I guess, of the scholarship was that she would have to be enrolled in something in the medical field. And it had to go to a female student who portrayed, I guess, kindness and congeniality, which, to my knowledge, was something that Andrea herself also portrayed. And along with that, she had to submit her acceptance letter for the program. She had to enter an essay that she had written about her involvement in the community, things like that. So she's always had a helping nature and is always trying to help everyone else. It doesn't matter what it is. She's always there. At school, she was involved with like the social justice committee at school and helped organize conferences. Just a little while ago, there were students that flew from Labrador even to attend the conference on the weekend that she was involved with. She had joined the Pooch Cove Fire Department as a volunteer fire person. And she's been doing that now a year and a half, has passion for it all and anything to do with helping. So it's no surprise to me that she wanted to do paramedicine. She submitted her required documents, and she said, well, this is it, and if I have a chance, I have a chance. And we didn't find out, of course, until last night. We were supposed to find out earlier, but they decided to keep it for the cap and gown ceremony, which was really, really nice. And, I guess Jason Kelly and his two sons, Ryan and Jeremy, and Ryan graduated with Asia last night. And the family, I guess, decided that they wanted to do something in memory of Andrea, and she was awarded the very first award, which is a very prestigious award, obviously. So the only hope now is that she picks up the torch and she carries on and, hopefully makes everything go through, and she graduates with paramedicine, and we'll keep in touch with the family for sure. So
I bet you will.
I heard you talking earlier, and I just wanted to call in.
Yeah, Jason sent me the information, and there's nothing like a little bit of good news to make the world go around, and I'm happy to share the story. And congratulations to Asia. Just out of curiosity, so when it was announced, was it a surprise, or did she know she was getting it?
No, she had no idea.
Oh, good.
She didn't even know, actually, how many candidates had applied for it. And she said, Mom, I gave it my fighting chance. My information has gone in, and we'll just have to wait and see. And last night it was a total surprise. Don't know yet how many candidates there were. But again, Jason had shared the essay with, I guess, some family and some of his friends who were helping make the decision with who should receive the scholarship, and I guess it was unanimous. They had said to him, she's the one. And, she even had to, get her attributes, basically backed up from the community. So the teacher at the school, Mr. Keith Connors, he had wrote a letter to Jason as well, saying, everything that she had spoke about in her essay was true. And Captain Robin Gould of the Pooch Cove Fire Department, he submitted a letter to Jason as well, supporting, her. So she's, like I said, she's been involved, and last night was a total shock, a good one. But she was surprised, and she kind of froze for a minute when they called her name, and then she said to me after the ceremony, she said, Mom, I had everything in me to not run to the stage. And I said, you know what? You deserve it. You absolutely deserve it. She's so deserving of it. She's such a remarkable person.
Congratulations to Asia. It's brilliant. And $10,000 is not an insignificant amount of money.
No, it isn't, and you know what? Like, it's a running start. I'll tell you that right now. However, much it costs, it doesn't matter. She was going anyway, and that's what her passion is following. And we're there to support her. And thank you again to Jason, Ryan, Jeremy, and the family for choosing her. And again, she'll carry the torch with pride, I'm sure.
And we can hear the pride in your voice, and rightfully so. Congratulations to the entire family.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for speaking with me.
My pleasure, Jennifer. Have a nice summer.
Take care. You too. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. All right, there you go. Fantastic. Well done. Let's go to line number 1. Amir, you're on the air.
Good morning, buddy.
Hi, Amir.
Hello, buddy. First of all, buddy, thanks. You are the face of the VOCM, but Dave and all other team, sometimes people don't remember, or sometimes they just think that there is a teamwork. And so I want to say thanks to all your team.
Me too. Thank you.
Yeah, Paddy, thanks. Yeah, call number 9, man. All my friends. Even I'm ready to take a challenge. Their combined number of call, if they want to chase me, but they are all good boys.
Yes, and so I was right. It is call number 9.
Yes, Paddy, that's another thing making me more love to you, that you remember.
And if I remember correctly, one of your friends actually took up the challenge and made his first call there a few months ago.
Yes, Jason Carey from Fairviews. Yes, he's a great lad. Jason Carey, Corey Newman, Corey Vincent, Craig, Dennis, they all love you. They all love you, but they are good talkers, man. But they just don't call you.
That's all we can do. Amir, what do you want to talk about this morning?
Paddy, the reason of calling is like awareness. Paddy, we had a gray and white summer. So sometimes people, if people have little bit, they want to open up their bikes or their lightly performance vehicles like American Muscles, Mustang, Camaro, Charger, Challenger, or German side, you have AMG division of Mercedes and M division of BMW. If people are little bit enjoying a day, Paddy, I came in Newfoundland 2012. And if you ask me, Amir, do you feel any difference on the road, Paddy? It's incredible. It's like unbelievable hate on the road. People hate other person. And just for the awareness, I want to say that sound is nothing to do with the speed. Paddy, my vehicle has manual mode. I can make a sound all day at 30, 40 kilometer per hour. So some people, just for their knowledge, or sometimes they don't realize that sound is nothing to do with speed. And then I just want to spread patience that bikers, little bit performance vehicle, they are stored all winter. Man, they are opening up their vehicle. Don't hate them. If they don't have side-by-side Ski-Doo, Sea-Doo, or boat, everybody don't want boat, or like I don't want what my neighbor wants, but Paddy, I respect every kind of machine or every kind of vehicle or bike. I don't drive bike, but I have most respect. And as soon as I saw a biker, I'm like double. My attention goes into a double attention mode and careful, give them space rather than hate them or any other vehicle. So that was the main thing. Like patience on road, Paddy, it's unbelievably on a low level, and like everything is interconnected. You were talking this morning, one of the guy was talking about sharing ride, Uber and taxi. The friction between them, you never know. If I am a taxi driver, on the corner of my eye, every other vehicle seems to be a Uber to me. And that makes me slightly, my grip on the steering little bit start getting tight and tense. It's like, it's almost, I take it, your behavior on roads Paddy, if we start evaluating our behavior on road with the mental illness, Paddy, 90% of people we are all ill and sick. We like you know what I mean? From which direction I'm trying to come.
Absolutely, I'm following along perfectly well. I don't know what happens when some people get behind the wheel. It's like they just kind of lose their mind, and they don't, have any rational approach to understanding that their behaviour not only impacts them and their safety, but everyone else around them. I mean, driving around St. John's really is frustrating. I don't pretend to be the best driver in the world, but I guarantee you, I've come to my senses when it comes to aggressive, reckless, and distracted driving. I mean, I just want to get where I'm going. That's it. Fundamentally, that's all my only concern.
Yeah, that's right. And Paddy, they are the best people. Out of their driving seat on the road, they are the best people. But as soon as they come on a road, they absolutely become a different human being. So I sometimes took it as a part of the mental health and the human psychology, that patience is so important, and sometimes you just get into that mindset that, man, even a smallest thing, people get annoyed why you overtake them. Like most simple things. So, Paddy, just a friendly and humble reminder. Bikers are out. Beautiful day. Sun is out. We had a good week. So I just want to request everybody give space to everyone, and everybody enjoys.
Absolutely, I'm with you, Amir. Have a nice day, sir. Look forward to call number 10.
So nice, Paddy, and say my regards, hello, and thank you to full team.
Will so. Stay in touch, Amir.
Okay, have a nice day and a nice weekend. Bye, Paddy. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, Sarah. You're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How are you?
I'm doing okay. How about you?
Good. I actually just wanted to call in regarding Jason Finnegan's conversation with yourself regarding mental health and preventative measures. Mm-hmm. This is my first time calling in, and it takes a lot for me to speak out about something. And I just wanted to, go back to the importance of preventative measures and just give you a little background of myself and my own journey.
Sure.
So basically, I worked in the financial corporation world, and after having my child, I ended up with postpartum depression. I returned to work, and I was traveling for work and going to meetings and so on. And then there was just one day about 7 or 8 months later that I just stood up and drove myself to the Waterford. And I wasn't well enough to work anymore, which in turn ended me up in the hospital for 60 days. So, myself as a working individual, a mother, I had a family, good, supporting, loving environment. Basically, I just wanted to reiterate that mental health can happen to anyone, and there is still stigma there. If I felt that I had further supports within my workplace or somewhere to just turn, I wouldn't have had to wait until the very last minute when I was in crisis. And it just goes back to the importance of catching things and building the awareness piece, because ultimately, like the commercial just said, mental health is wealth.
Absolutely right. So at your workplace, were there any supports available, or did you simply feel like you were afraid to speak out, whether it be to jeopardize your position in the company or the stigma associated? So what was actually available, if anything?
I would say there was definitely both at that time. I mean, it was quite a few years ago. We've definitely opened the communication piece in the last 4 or 5 years for mental health. But at that time, no, I was very much afraid to express how I was feeling. And once I did end up in hospital, I did not tell anyone where I was for quite some time. So, yes, the stigma piece was very alive then. I also know other people who do also struggle similar situations that do not come out and talk about things. For instance, the last few weeks, there have been 3 mothers who have died by suicide. For me, enough was enough, And myself, Glenn Royal, and Pam Party, you may know her, we have actually joined forces to create an organization to help with preventative measures and help to fill the gaps in all of the determinant social aspects here in our province.
And so you presented yourself at the Waterford, and then what?
Well, you know what? It was very difficult to get in, Patty. I'm not going to lie. I've been a mental health advocate now since my own experience, and I've helped others navigate the system and the resources that are available. And you really have to advocate for yourself, or you need to have someone with you in order to help reach that ultimate end goal of, I'm broken. I need help right now. And if I don't get help, other people will suffer. For instance, I also happen to be a foster parent. And it just goes back to how important these preventative measures for mental health and addictions are, so that we have less children involved in the system. The parents get the resources that they need, because ultimately mental health is a familial disease, and it does impact everyone who's surrounded by the person who's sick.
Absolutely right. And as a first-time caller, really appreciate that. And I don't know if you listen to the show at all, but we really do try to keep this conversation going, whether it be in an effort to normalize mental health discussions and people feel like they can share their own personal stories, because when we paint the picture of mental health, mental illness, and mental wellness, on the public airwaves, hopefully that's had a positive impact on it. If it's helped one person, that's good. And hopefully it's done more than that. But I'm not afraid of these types of discussions. I think we need to have more of them. And so whether it be Jason instigating or provoking your call, and whether or not anyone else wants to talk about today as a larger issue, whether it be for access or continuity of care or long-term care or rural versus urban or tell their own story, we're 100% interested in it at every turn. Sarah, I really appreciate your time. Would you like to say anything else this morning?
I do, actually. I would just like to say to anyone who is struggling with their mental health or addiction issues that you're not alone. There are other people out there who have overcome it. And just know that today might feel like the hardest day of your life. But if you reach out to someone, it is possible to live a fulfilling, long life. So I just wish everyone the best out there.
The very same to you, Sarah. Stay in touch.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Patty.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Before we get to the break, I want to give a quick shout-out to the St. John's Boys Under-13 UK soccer team. They're actually taking the team to the UK in August, fundraising for a long time, try to offset some of the costs. Going to be a great experience. They're actually going to get to train with the Leicester professional soccer team. They play in the Premier League, attend some professional games, visit other locations, learn about the UK, have a few games themselves. In an effort to raise a few bucks, they've got a fundraiser at the Sobeys Howley Estates this weekend on Saturday, June the 22nd from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Hot dogs, $3. Hamburgers, $5. Pop, Gatorade, water, $2 each. So if you want to help fuel the coffers of the St. John's Boys Under-13 UK team, go over and have a hot dog or a burger or a pop on Saturday between 11 and 3. Let's take a break. When we come back, Trevor Croft is there representing Clean Harbours Initiative. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 1. Good morning, Trevor Croft. You're on the air.
How are you this morning, Paddy?
Doing okay. How about you?
Not too bad. So I'm the other guy with Clean Harbours Initiative.
You and Sean, yes.
Yep. So I just wanted to touch base and talk about our lack of funding and our current fundraiser. So this year the government didn't release any Go Scare funding whatsoever. So we never got any funding at all this year, which is pretty disheartening. Last year, $4 million came to this province. And we didn't get in on that funding at all. We applied for it, but we didn't qualify, is what they told us, which is again pretty disheartening. But after Fiona, we recovered 80,000 pounds of debris over the Port of Basque area in the first 2 weeks. In the last 6 years, we removed over 400,000 pounds of debris, which is pretty insane. And phenomenal. During Fiona, when we got a little bit of Fiona money off the government there 2 years ago, we recovered 40,000 pounds of ghost gear out of the Port of Basque area. So last year, when that funding came in, they only removed, I think, 30 or 40,000 pounds total with the $4 million that came to this province. And some of the groups that got the money didn't even have the equipment or the knowledge to do it, and they ended up hiring us as subcontractors to do the work for a lesser amount of pay, basically, right? I mean, we were grateful to get in on it a little bit, but I mean, in our opinion, that money should have came to a group that's doing this 24/7 versus someone that's doing it in their spare time, right?
Absolutely. And I don't know if you heard the call, but we had a caller who simply heard, maybe you or Sean, and I guess it was probably you, on the broadcast, talking about what Clean Harbours Initiative is doing, and he called supporting you and saying that public funding really should be flowing your way, and I agree with him 100%. I mean, it's just sort of, I don't know, there's a disconnect there somewhere between the federal government's attention and commentary regarding environmental protection and expansion of marine protected areas and all those types of things, and the province, I think the same could be said, talking about the environment in certain areas. Now, of course, people will come back at me and say, well, how about these wind farms? Fair enough, but there is, I think, an overlap with both levels of government, talking about the importance of the environment and protection of, and then we got you guys doing exactly that and not getting the funding. It just doesn't even make any sense.
No, it doesn't make sense to us either. I mean, we're struggling right now, to be 100% honest. We're doing a fundraiser right now on selling tickets on a $35,000 side-by-side. So, I mean, we got tickets up for $50 each, and we got $5 raffle tickets available. And we only got a couple of weeks left to sell them, and it was only yesterday we finally paid the bike off. So we only got like 2 weeks worth of profit, maybe 10 days worth of profit, really, to make up. So, I mean, we're at Kent in Mount Pearl today and tomorrow until 9 p.m. and at Princess Auto Saturday and Sunday selling tickets. So if anybody wants to come out and support us, we definitely need the help, because we're not going to get any other funding besides this fundraiser and a scattered donation coming in. So it's important that people try to support us as much as they can, if they can.
I'm with you, and I'm glad you called this morning. So just give the folks an example. So you talked about the amount of debris you pulled out of the water around Port aux Basques post-Fiona and what have you, and I know that you guys have done some 50 harbour cleanups over the years. I think they've been on the go since 2018. So what's next?
Well, each time we get a bit of funding, we'll do another cleanup. I mean, the last cleanup we did was out in Brigus. We got 25 tyres roughly out of the harbour in a couple of hour period. And I mean, luckily the people in Port aux Basques will take those to the dump for us. But if they don't, then we need to take those to the dump, and then we need to pay to dispose of the garbage that we take out of the water. So I mean, everywhere you're looking, there's an expense.
Yeah, and maybe, just maybe, there might be able to strike some sort of relationship to waive tipping fees for people who are doing this type of environmental work. I'm not saying that that's a possibility, but it'd be nice to peruse the possibility to see those fees waived. Okay, so I hope that you and Sean are able to continue the good work that you've been doing, because if you hadn't been doing it, all of that ghost gear, or most of that ghost gear, most of the plastic, most of the tires would still be in the bays.
Absolutely, and like I said before, now when you're out like catching those codfish and lobster and crab and stuff like that, I mean, they're eating that plastic. They're getting trapped in that plastic. So you wonder why the cancer rates are so high. I mean, we hauled a lobster out of a tire in Port aux Basques. We literally had to cut the tire apart to get the lobster out because he grew so big inside the tire, and the poor lobster was coal black.
Plastic is in our system. It's in the food chain, whether it be the microplastic or what have you. I mean, they're doing studies about the presence of plastics in placenta. They're talking about the amount of plastic in our bodies, generally speaking, whether it be the environmental concerns and or as part of the food chain. So it's complete madness. I know people are frustrated with government heavy-handedness and overreach, and the courts have struck down the feds trying to label plastic as toxic and get involved in provincial jurisdiction. But the fact of the matter is, it's an ongoing concern. We use too much plastic. So inside the world of recycle, reduce, and reuse, we got to start reducing. I mean, plastic is just madness. Just go to the store today. Go to the grocery store and ask yourself as to why so many things are encapsulated in plastic. I mean, a cucumber does not need a plastic wrap.
No, absolutely. I mean, I was at Sobeys yesterday, and they have sliced oranges wrapped in plastic.
Yeah.
It comes with its own container, really. So, I mean, it's ridiculous. But if anybody can come out to Kent today or tomorrow to support us here in Mount Pearl and Princess Auto Saturday and Sunday, it'd be greatly appreciated. We take debit, credit, cash, whatever you got on hand to support us, we can take.
I appreciate the time. Good luck to you and Sean. Stay in touch.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. It's Trevor Croft with the Clean Harbours Initiative. Let's keep rolling. Let's go to line number 3. Good morning, Miles Russell. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy.
Welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for giving me a call. Yeah, so you guys were reaching out, wanted to chat a bit about transit-oriented development?
And I want to talk about, all things regarding sustainability, including the idea that we can green up an abandoned parking lot and those types of issues.
Yeah, just as the preamble of it, we have roughly 550,000 parking stalls in St. John. That's houses, that's businesses, that's on-street parking, which is 4 times the population. So there's a lot of parking kicking around. Probably don't need that much. So there's a lot of opportunity across the city between Roadblock Lane, even around Confederation Buildings, Stavanger Drive, and obviously around the Village Mall. That area is, I would say, desolate would be a good way to explain it.
So how do we approach it? Because, people will complain about the dearth of parking in the downtown core, and I know you didn't say the downtown in that preamble. So what do you suggest we do with these spaces? Because sometimes, every now and then, every space in some of these parking lots may be used or utilized. And, of course, we know we have a car-centric culture here in this country. Well, I would suggest in all 3 countries in North America. So what are you suggesting we do?
Well, I agree with you that there is, on occasion, a rare time when some buildings need a lot of their capacity. I'd stretch to say 100%, but in the case, let's say, like a couple of days before Christmas, a lot of people forgot to get some gifts. Yeah, the Walmart parking lots around the city might be at like 90% capacity. I would say in those situations, we still don't need to have that maximum capacity. It's like saying to somebody, hey, I'd like to build a house, and my family might visit once every 3 years, so I should build an 8-bedroom home. Might be a little nonsensical. Maybe during those extreme situations when you have a lot of family visiting, like, for example, a lot of people going to a business at the same time, maybe we carpool. Maybe if alternatives for, like, say, cycling and public transit were available, you wouldn't need all that car space. So that's I guess, the social aspect. Because you're right, there is a social aspect to people wanting to go somewhere and immediately have public parking that's free. I would also like to ride bikes somewhere, and very few places am I actually able to lock my bike somewhere secure. So in a lot of cases, I just don't take my bike around. It's just a risk not worth having for having someone steal, an e-bike or something like that. So, the social aspect of parking is certainly there.
Yeah, and I've been to places in this world where when we talk about biking, you don't need that big obstructive bike rack either. I've seen examples where there's just basically little handles that are attached to the building that are there for you to wrap your lock around. So we don't need that sidewalk covered with a big bike rack, the traditional one we can all picture in our mind's eye. There's different smaller options out there that can make it much, much easier. And I know we've expanded the opportunity for people to use public transit and to have their bike toted along. And, people will generally bemoan the bike lanes that have been installed in some parts of the city, but there's different ways to handle these issues.
Yeah, and when we look at something like, say, for example, the Village Mall, I had recently done a kind of a visual representation of what a transit-oriented development would look like in that area. And what that boils down to is essentially a lot of people online were saying, hey, it's private land. Yes, understand. That is literally how development regulations work. The city makes regulations, they enact them through zoning regulations, and private developers may do anything that fits that regulation. So there's nothing that prevents anyone from modifying an existing development that's privately owned in terms of zoning. So a big place like the Village Mall was designed for a capacity that is long since gone in the the late 70s and early 80s. That parking lot's parking minimums are calculated on different use cases than what are there now. The old Wilco/Walmart, whatever it used to be called back on when that had a Sears and a Walmart and a grocery store nearby in the mall itself, those were different days. And you're right, back then it was very car driven. But there's no reason we can't have a different regime for that type of development. Like, that area now is currently commercial retail. You're not allowed to have housing there in any way, shape, or form. It's literally just box stores, and every building out there, except for the Village Mall, is one story. Kind of a pretty big waste of space to be so centrally located to the Village Mall's bus station, which is the current busiest bus station in the city in terms of number of buses and transfers between. But it's certainly not utilized to what it could be. To walk to the Village Mall is about 1 kilometer to any house. Kind of be nicer if there's potentially some houses nearby. So when you look at, say, greening a parking lot, tearing out the asphalt and leaving it as gravel, yeah, that's unsightly. But there's no reason we can't have a parking minimum in that area reduced to 0, specifically because of a transit hub. That's what other cities are doing, like Vancouver, and even provinces like BC across the entire province. has legislated that anything within any of their rail, the CN rail or the SkyTrain in Vancouver proper, there are no parking minimums within, I think it's a kilometer. So that allows buildings to be built directly adjacent to bus stops with no parking whatsoever, and that is saving developers a lot of money.
So we've described savings for developers, what it might mean for positive signs for individuals. What's the upside for the city?
Loads of money. Patty, it simply comes down to money. When you're talking to development, take Star of the Sea downtown. That building's base price of construction was 30% parking garage. Now, there are a lot of people down in that building have cars, but in general downtown, and that's a premium to be had, but everybody in that building, whether they own a car or not, pays for that building to have parking. So when you're looking at that kind of design, we can certainly envision a world where that's required less. Parking at a premium or at service is a common thing.
Yeah, I mean, when you boil it back to the upside for the city, that should provide incentive, because what we do need is an increased revenue side for the city of St. John's. Reminder to my fellow residents, our property taxes went up by 13% this year. So revenue side incentives should be what every city councillor is striving for. Not just waiting for applications for permits to come in the door, right? Not just waiting for the ability to increase my water tax, but thinking, I hate this phrase, but outside the box, so to speak.
Yeah, and to go back to the income side of it, when you look at something like the Village Mall, I made a comparison on CBC the other day to say that the Avalon Mall and the Village Mall are very comparable floor plates of the building and property sizes themselves. And the Village Mall is worth about 10% of what the Avalon Mall is. So the current way that the city, you or I, anybody who owns a piece of property in the city, when the city gives you your assessment, you can appeal the assessment and say, you know what, I don't think my house is worth $310. I think it's only worth $280. Because if your assessment value is lower, you pay less on your taxes. Mm-hmm. Well, on the commercial side, they come with an army of lawyers. So essentially on any property that's large value like that, the commercial properties have a vested interest to basically dictate to the city. And this is not what's happening per se, but if the city wants to avoid litigation and a company says, well, we think this building's only worth $30 million, then they would say to the city, well, this is what we think the value of the building is. The city would normally go along with that. And the problem with that is an area that's very similar in different parts of the city, one brings in about $6 million of taxes from a single property owner to just $600,000. So if you take an area like the Village Mall and you were to build it up and really, go a little with a car-like design and fill it up with residential buildings, redevelop it with mixed use and add city amenities like parks and playgrounds and things like that in the area, all within a couple-minute walk of a big transit hub, city could be generating possibly, depending on the valuation and how this would be done, anywhere the value of the land could be $500 million to $1 billion worth of infrastructure in the existing floor plan area that's owned by Plaza Riet in the area. And that includes the old Walmart building, the mall itself, all the parking lots. That is potentially 10% of the entire city's tax revenue could come from a single area of the city that's the size of basically two malls.
Yeah.
So if this is the kind of revenue thing that needs to be looked at, that's a lot of money being left on the table that the city doesn't need to penalize developers with development fees. They could simply say, hey, look, in the long term, and even in the short term, we're going to make a lot of money on taxes from this.
Absolutely. Miles, we're a bit over time for the news, but I always appreciate your time and perspective. Thanks for doing it.
Thanks so much. Cheers, Eddie.
Okay, bye-bye. All right, let's take a break for the news. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 4. Pam, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How are you this morning?
I'm okay. How about you?
I'm great. I'm calling in this morning. There was a report that came out in CBC a couple of days ago, and it talked about how the Newfoundland and Labrador government had paid nearly $400,000 per child on average, children in care, children who have complex needs who go into homes outside of their own home when there's problems. And it's $240 million on services by fewer than a dozen companies is what's being provided in this province. And unfortunately, as a mom myself, I know many of these people many of these children, many of these families, many of these parents who have children in this care, and it's not only the children who have the complex needs, but it's the entire family. And a lot of times that's missed. And what I have seen is, especially during COVID, there was this group of moms, and we all had our children in the same activities. COVID hits, jobs are lost, families break up, houses are lost, vehicles are aging and are not reliable. And there's a spiral, and of course the mental health of families are affected. Some parents deal with it with addiction, perhaps an increase in alcohol use and whatnot. And then the child, of course, is acting out in school. There's the bullying or the violence that they are usually the cause of. Grades are slipping, they don't show up, and then they're identified as being a problem. And one of the things that I've noticed with the families that I know who have been affected is that often these situations are dealt with, with a hammer as opposed to, with a wrecking ball, to use an analogy, as opposed to really digging down and seeing what some of these families need. I've done a little bit of research in mental health. I've been affected myself. I realized that I was suffering from severe anxiety, and I like to say it was the water that I was boiled in, because that's all I knew that was normal, until I actually reached out for help and found a medication that worked for me. But when I look at some of these situations with these families and some of the research that I've done, for me, it was 3 days of support was all that I required to get myself back on track and to recognize that there was an issue and that there was possibly a solution. For me, it was medical. And for other people, it's housing. That's, someone in the system who reaches out for help with system who are homeless. They're told to go to Facebook. A lot of these people are so frustrated and so shamed, and they feel that they've lost their confidence and voice by the time they don't know how to deal with a child who's in care. They don't know how to find their power, I guess, and try to turn the family back into some kind of a unit that might not be the same as it was before, but it's still a functioning family unit. These children that are ending up in care, I know one in particular, this is going on year 3, from the age of 13 to 15 or 16 now, has had a very different life than my daughter. There's no family structure. They're not in a foster care system. They're in an apartment-style system. They're still not going to school. There's still problems with the law. So they're no better off than when they're worse off than when they were in the home, and were causing some disruptions in the classroom. Where that could have been dealt with perhaps with a softer hand, it was dealt with, like I said, with a wrecking ball and taken out, and now they're one of these $420 million accounts on a line, on an accountant's line. And it's really sad that poverty, mental health, and those type of things are now affecting another generation, when I think there's so much more we can do with that $420 million as a province.
Very likely. I mean, the amount of money that we're paying, I believe we're the only province in the country that treats level 4 care like this in this current system. And I was curious as to hear more from Minister Paul Pike and his assessment of the current strategy and the current policies. And he says, they're probably the best that we can have in place. How can that possibly be? If we just look at something as fundamental as 225 children in level 4 care, historically 3/4 never even get through high school. I don't know how we measure success.
Exactly. And a lot of these cases, I know many of these cases with children in care who one of the parents has a terminal illness, and a family dealing with that stress is causing a child to act out. And, suddenly they're sent away to a group home instead of addressing, addressing a need. And I know a lot of the workers, social workers and whatnot. There was another report out by CBC as well that talked about how these social workers are not coming back into the system. Like, people are retiring, nobody's replacing them, people are leaving and they're finding other communication jobs or other jobs because they're getting, it's not the social workers' fault, it's not the government's fault, but these social workers are working in a system where they're getting stress from children, stress from parents, stress from supervisors, stress from the community at large, and they're being blamed for all these things. I can't imagine having to work in that kind of a system, and so no wonder there's so much stress. But sometimes all that's required, is 3 days of support, 3 days of counseling. What is it you need? What would help this family? Perhaps it's a family counseling session for a couple of days to help them recognize and voice these concerns. And again, a lot of times you're engaging with people when they're at their worst. When you have mental health issues, it is the time when you are at your very worst. You can't see clearly. You don't know how to voice what's going on. All you know is that things are bad. And so many women are committing suicide, and these are mothers, and these are wives, and a lot of these people have jobs, and you wonder just what is going wrong. What is it that these women can't voice? Where have they reached out to support them? Why wasn't it better equipped? Like I say, the water you're boiled in. Some people don't recognize that there's a problem until it's too late. But there has to be something changed within the system that provides support. I know LifeWise, for instance, is providing some support down at the Waterford Hospital, some peer support, and I have heard from women, my age, mothers, grandmothers, women in the workforce that have been assigned a peer support worker from LifeWise, and that has made more of a difference. These people are waiting for psychiatrists, they're waiting for help, they're waiting for support, but even just having access to someone from LifeWise has turned things around. And I would go so far as to say, because I've heard it from people, have prevented people taking action like suicide.
The social worker issue is bigger than we're giving it credit for. So between 2014 and 2021, between the Department of Children, Seniors and Social Development and NL Health Services, there was 185 resignations and 72 retirements. The group that's really getting pummeled here is the younger social workers. Because of the lack of experience, they're generally being assigned work in child protection services, the biggest and most traumatic file. Consequently, with all of these resignations and retirements, the number of vacancies went from 99 to 105. So consequently, what was already overwhelming caseloads, have just gotten worse. So in child protection, I know, look, if I was a social worker, I probably wouldn't want to be in that file because that sounds extremely difficult to me. So consequently, our youngest, least experienced, greenest social workers are having to take on that task. And consequently, what do you think is happening? They're leaving. They can't handle it. They don't want to handle it. And so the problem is only getting worse. We focusing on recruitment and retention of healthcare professionals. I think we owe the education system more attention. But this social work issue, and it's not even that simple, because you could have social workers in the education system, in criminal justice, in the Department of Health Community Services, CCSD, and so to tackle it inside of one ministerial portfolio is impossible, because social workers are throughout. I mean, they're working at the cancer centre, they're working at the penitentiary, or they should be at the penitentiary, and throughout a variety of services and sectors. Pam, I'll give you the final thoughts before I have to get going.
I just wanted to say that it is all of our problem. I don't personally have a child in the system, but these children are interacting with our children. There are future employers, employees. There are actually our future, and I think we really all need to gather together and come up with some kind of a solution that's better than what we're offering these children and these families. We can't forget these parents. These are not criminal. These parents are not criminals who lose these children. They are circumstances beyond their control in many, many cases, and we just really need to do better as a province. Appreciate the time, Pam. Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, the Executive Director of the John Howard Society, Cindy Murphy, she's in the queue, and then it's the Mayor of Fogo Island, Andrew Shea. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number one. Say good morning to the Executive Director of the John Howard Society of Newfoundland and Labrador. That's Cindy Murphy. Cindy, you're on the air.
Morning, Patty.
Good morning to you.
Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, happy to do it. This is sort of maybe a strange place to start because we can talk about the conditions at the penitentiary and what that means upon release. But what I say all the time is, look, we've got to do everything possible to ensure that to deal with recidivism rates, that we cannot have people being released that are coming out worse than they went in. Is that a sense that you're getting?
Absolutely. That has been the sense for a long time. Certainly since pre-pandemic, things have gotten progressively worse. And it's a whole bunch of factors that are contributing to that. Everything from, and the primary one is the shortage of staff. That's causing all kinds of problems with operations. It's causing problems with programs being able to operate. As an organization that's committed to criminal justice and rehabilitation, we are not getting in on a regular basis to do the programs we're contracted to do. So when we talk about people being released, you're absolutely right. We need to prepare people. We want them to come out better than they went in. We all have a responsibility to ensure that's to happen. And when you treat people the way they're being treated, like the news stories we've been hearing this week around, the rat infestation, rodents, and all those good things that are terrible things that are happening, that's not treating people humanely. And if you want them to do better, we have to be able to, provide some sort of support and treat them more humanely. Or they're going to come out and people will question, well, why are these guys reoffending? Well, they're reoffending because they haven't been given anything to do otherwise. And, it's a complicated process, and it's not as simple as, well, if you lock them up in lousy conditions, then that should teach them not to go back and not to reoffend. Well, if it was only that easy. But clearly that's not the case, and that doesn't work. And it requires resources, both human and programs and supports upon release and discharge planning and all those good things. But, for to be treated that way, to wake up, in that kind of circumstance that was described this week, is absolutely horrendous.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how we have to craft the message because, you'll hear some people talking about the revolving door and the light sentences and who cares about the conditions and those types of things. If we just got all the way back to dropping the political stripes and just talk about public safety upon release, we'd probably come to a collective agreement that how we currently handle it, especially when we talk about the conditions at Her Majesty's Penitentiary, but even in the penal system in full. No one wants to hear this, and no one is suggesting, or I'm not suggesting, that we do anything to coddle a criminal. I'm not saying that. No. And they have to be punished. But it has to incorporate some rehabilitation because the straight up science is very clear on this front. And I don't care who you plan on voting for in the upcoming elections, is this type of punishment 100% makes it worse. It does not encourage pro-social behaviors and pro-social understanding. It just makes people worse. And if that's the case, and you think it's fine that they're living the way they're living upon being incarcerated at HMP, you're basically saying that public safety be damned. Punishment should be the keen focus, when in fact that's making things worse. We talk about upticking crime, perception or otherwise, people feeling safe in their own homes. Well, if we continue doing what we're doing at that antiquated dungeon, then your worries are going to be further exacerbated, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, it's all our problem. It's not just, you can't just turn a blind eye to this and presume that everything is going to be okay because someone is locked up. It doesn't work that way. It's never worked that way, and it's gotten more complex than ever before with the level of mental health and addiction within our prison population. It's significantly high, and people need those resources to do better, to be better, and to come back into our community. I was looking at recently some stats, and they went back to 2021, so they're a little bit outdated, but in this country, we spend $50 billion on criminal justice. So that's both at the federal and provincial level. Huge amount of money. And, you really have to question what kind of return we're getting for that kind of money, right? If people are just coming in and out of the system on a constant basis, then really all we're doing is warehousing people, which is so not in agreement with the mission statement of the Department of Justice and Public Safety in this province. There is a mission around rehabilitation. It's not happening. And something has to be done. We can't continue this. Every time I seem to come on your show, we're talking about the same things over and over again. And, there's very little change, There's still no word on the prison. What's going on there, But again, and I said this to the minister, we're a long ways out before that prison is built. What are we going to do in the meantime? You can't just ignore what's happening. And the summer is a particularly difficult time at Her Majesty's Penitentiary. with the lack of ventilation, the lack of appropriate air circulation in the building, the lack of staff to let people to get out to get some fresh air, so they're locked in their units. They're often locked in their cells because there's such a shortage of staff. They don't get to programs regularly. They're not getting to see their families, which is important to rehabilitation and reconnectivity. That's an important part of getting somebody back successfully in the community. It's maintaining those social positive contacts upon release. And I can only imagine, we speak on behalf of the offender population, but I can only imagine from a staffing perspective what a terrible place it must be to work, and having to face those conditions, because, they're doing 12-hour shifts every day in there, and, it's just deplorable.
And again, I can predict the kind of emails I'm going to get, and so be it, because I think it's an important topic. So $50 billion a year, the two most expensive things in this country is a night in hospital or a night in prison. And if we can do better on both, we're going to be better off fiscally speaking, not to mention, societally speaking and morality-wise. Mm-hmm. But here's what's potentially coming down the pike here too. With the lack of opportunity, whether it be for programs and or getting outside or access to your lawyer on a frequent basis, which is enshrined in the actual Constitution, we've got a civil case coming. I'm not going to be surprised one iota. We've got the judges factoring in the conditions at the prison for sentencing. We've got parole being offered earlier than required because of the conditions. So everything that people don't want is being forced by the conditions inside the pen. So I will be 100% shocked if there's not a civil suit at some point in the future.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either. But, I often think about, as a society, how we treat our most marginalized says a lot about our society, doesn't it? And, when we have, and you know it and I know it, the backlash around the prison population, they've done crime so they get what they deserve kind of mentality. Yes, and I'm not saying that people shouldn't be held accountable. Absolutely they should. That's our society, that's our criminal justice system. But just to hold people in a warehouse and house them for years on end and do nothing else is not what our criminal justice system in this country is all about. And we can do better, and we must do better.
And we'll all be better off. That's the message that I think gets lost in some corners is, if we do better there, we're safer, it costs us less money, and everything else that's good about the positive outcomes.
Society is safer.
We're safer.
Yeah, society is safer.
I'd rather be safer.
Day, for sure.
Yeah.
Me too.
I always appreciate the time, Cindy. Thank you.
Thanks, Eddie.
Take care. Bye-bye. Cindy Murphy, Executive Director, John Howard Society. So just to reiterate, if you commit a crime, yes, we must punish you. We must. But there's a difference between how we currently punish people and how people get punished in other places where they see recidivism rates go way down. It's not about being soft on crime. It's not about coddling criminals. It's about looking at whether or not what we're doing is working. And currently, I think the argument is pretty clear. It's not. Let's take a break. When we go back, we're going to Fogo Island and say good morning to the mayor, Andrew Shea. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 5. Say good morning to the mayor of Fogo Island. That's Andrew Shea. Mayor Shea, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you?
Best kind. How about you?
Well, you know what my topic is, the ferry.
Yep.
It's rough going, at the best. It's pretty well intolerable, but we got to tolerate it because there's no more boats, and I'm just sick of complaining to everyone. So what we've done recently is we send off an email to the Premier Fury, Minister Abbott, Deputy Minister John Baker, and Director of Services Stephen Power, and we asked for emergency meeting with them to discuss the ferry service. We also contacted Bell Island, and they're going to work with us. We're going to work with Bell Island. Fogo Island and Bell Island's going to work together to try to straighten this out with the government to get some kind of consensus on when the ferries goes off, what will happen. And also Shane Johnson's coming in with us. So the three of us are hoping to get an emergency meeting with the Premier and the Minister to see what we can do with this. See, Penny? Because what's happening, we're doing the same thing over and over, and we're expecting different results. We're doing it for years. Our ferry is scheduled to go off again in the winter for 3 months. That's the big boat, and then the Bell Island ferry the big one now, she's running over there. She's the only one running. They've lost her enhanced service. Plus, she's supposed to go on dock next year for either from 3 to 6 months. So all this is going to happen again next year, and we're going to be in the, excuse the pun, the same boat again. You know, this is not getting fixed. When the ferry comes down, everybody forgets about it. And then it's going to happen again. Once one boat breaks, we're all in big trouble because the Flanders is gone. The minister said she's gone till 2025. So what do we do now if one boat breaks down? If our ferry comes back and she breaks down, they're having trouble. Like, we don't even know when she's coming back. We haven't been given a definite date yet.
Do we happen to know whether or not the veteran has even started the sea trials?
Nope. So as far as I know, she haven't. Apparently, there's a problem with her. Apparently, they're after spending about $2.5 million to replace the computer system and the wiring on her, and apparently they can't get it up and running with the program they're using to get it up and running. That's what I'm understanding is the problem, but it's hard to figure out what the problem is because every day it seems to be a different problem, but there's something major because, you know, we were supposed to have her within 2 weeks, and now we're gone 3 weeks going into the 4th week, and the boats just can't handle it. We got boats, like I came across this morning, there's 6 tractor trailers in the lineup. And once the Beaumont takes 2 tractor trailers, she can take 15 cars.
Yeah.
So we got 2 loads there now, and a couple of days ago the Beaumont broke down for a little while, and the boat was going till 3 o'clock in the morning. So all the ferry schedule at 7 o'clock in the morning was cancelled. So, you know, like, we just can't keep complaining about it. We got to get the government to try to work with the government to get something done about this, you know. And we got to work together. Change Islands and Fogo Island and Bell Island have to work together to get this solved.
What does that mean? Like, how are you going to work with Bell Island? Because I would imagine the residents of Bell Island don't want to see the Legionnaire go to the Fogo Island run.
No.
You know, and of course it does get a little bit more complicated with the Flanders now out, at least for the remainder of this year, and the Beaumont Hamel now on your run. So what does working with Bell Island mean?
Well, we've got to work to try to get some more boats or get rid of the boats we got and replace them so that when next year comes and the summer comes, we know what's happening. Like we can't leave this to chance. We can't have a boat on. We can't take off a 130-car ferry like we had on the fall and the winter and put on a boat that takes 25 cars. Like, this is ludicrous. Someone should have got fired for that. You know, this is not sensible. We're a busy island. This week coming up, we're bringing in sea cucumber from St. Pierre and down on the south coast. We got to bring in sea cucumber. We're processing them at the plant. And the guys on the ferry are doing a wonderful job. You know, I know they're taking some abuse, but they're doing a wonderful job. People working on the boats are fitting us in like you got to, you know, as tight as they can to get as many people on as they can. But the boats and what the government got is not adequate to do the service. It's just not adequate. So we're going to talk to them about improving this service so we don't have to fight with Bell Island. Bell Island shouldn't have to fight with us to get a boat. We shouldn't have to fight with Bell Island to get a boat. This is ludicrous.
So are you suggesting that the province needs to buy, build or lease similar-sized vessels to the Veteran Legionnaire add to the fleet?
I don't know, but Paddy, the Legionnaire is and our boat right now, the 2 big ones that we bought 8 years ago, has cost the government $23 million in repairs. And now they're putting $2.5 million into the computer system, and they're going to do the same thing with the Bell Island one. And the Veteran got to go back to Fall to get a motor put in her, and the Legionnaire got to go up and get all of the wiring and the computer system replaced in her for $2.5 million. You know, my God Almighty, how much money are we going to keep spending on those boats? They're only 8-year-old.
Yeah, add that to the $50 million piece when we bought them. I mean, right from the get-go, this was always sort of a strange tale. You know, they were bobbing around out there while we figured out whether or not we had to pay a tariff to bring them into the Canadian waters. Yep. They sat down in St. John's Harbour for months on end as we tried to figure out maintenance contracts and all the rest. So then, of course, they arrived, and the docks weren't even prepared for vessels that size. So, I mean, it's been...
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But you know, we can't get nowhere by fighting with Bell Island or Bell Island with us or us fighting with Change Islands. But maybe if we work together, maybe we can get somewhere. At least we got a chance.
Absolutely right. And so I'll be curious as to, look, for starters, and I say this all the time, but I think it's true, is when there's silence, it's not only deafening, it's frustrating. So if the answer is from the Minister's office, yes, you're right, we have to do more work on this computer system, and it probably looks like it's going to be another month. Okay, well, it's not the answer you wanted, but it's an answer.
Yes. No, we can't get an answer. Like, the boat was coming out 2 weeks ago. It's 10 days. When the Beaumont came, now we're going to be 10 days. We got a small ferry on there that takes 30 cars, they told us. But they're Mr. Bean cars. They're European cars. You can't get 25 cars on her standard size. You know, she's too small. We need to, you know, what we got in the summertime. We always said the veteran and the Beaumont came down and filled in the summer. She left in the fall. That was perfect. Belle Island had their 2 ferries. Perfect. But now the Flanders have gone till 2025, and there's rumors she may not be coming back. But, you know, like, so we can't just let everything go and say, oh, yeah, we'll do the same thing again next year. But you know the result. You know the result is going to be people are frustrated. People are, you know, this is deterrent to our island. It's deterrent to Belle Island. It's a deterrent to change islands. The province is losing money, and they're spending money, all kinds of money on those boats. It's just those boats are just eating up money. And Petty, they're just built bad. They're no good. They're garbage. That's the problem, and we're putting money into them. Better off we put them up for sale and get rid of them and see if we can get something that's going to work. If I had a car, I got a car now. I got 300,000 miles on her. She's 10-year-old. I haven't spent 23 million on her. I haven't spent anything on her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is foolish. Those are new boats.
Yeah, and if we put them up for sale, we're going to have to edit this conversation out because that'd be a bit of buyer beware.
Yeah, but at least we wouldn't be spending money. If we spend 23 million in 8 years, you know, that's a lot of money on those 2 boats, and the money is not stopping because it's only getting, you know, we got a motor to put in now, and now that's going to be probably $1.5 million by the time that's done. They got to be on the fall. So she's when she comes down, she doesn't have a spare motor. So if one of her motors break down, we're finished. She got to tie up at the wharf. We had a spare generator in them. They all got those spare engines. So this one don't have it, and it seems like it's gone for a year, and we can't get one. You know, they can't get the parts for it. And I think that's what the problem with the computer system is now. It might be done, but I don't think they can get the software to get it running.
I'll see what I can find out. We'll invite the minister on to see if we can't get some answers on your behalf.
But Paddy, I'll let you know if the ministers get back in the Greethfield meeting, because you know this is ludicrous. I know the people working in the department's taking a lot of heat and stuff like that, but it's time for the government to step in and do something about this. You know, this is ludicrous. We're doing the same old thing and expecting different outcomes. You
know what they say about that. Good to have you on the show, Mayor Shea. Keep me in the loop.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Paddy, for your time. And it's good because Openline gets it out there. All the people can listen. They know what's on the go. And, you know, you can't come on every day and complain about the ferry. You know, I can't do that. I got enough of complaining done now. So we're going to try another tactic. And Belle Island is 100% behind us. Change Island's 100% behind us. They're coming with us to the meeting, and they got their. We're not going to fight with each other. We're going to try to see what we can do to get enough of boats or get somehow that we can do this. And you know, not every year be at this. Because how much did it cost to rent that boat the year, Paddy?
No idea.
You know, like how much did it cost for this is a great big ship we rent, you know, that could take 130 cars, and she's going back and forth to Fogo Island for 5 or 6 months. How much did that cost? That's not counting the $2.5 million they put into the boat. You know?
I do.
It gets to a point, you know, where you say, well, boys, you know, we got to get a boat because we're spending more than we got, you know, on repairing this one. It's like if you got a used car and she's giving you all kinds of trouble, it's cheaper to buy one and make payment, isn't it?
Generally speaking, exactly right. Yeah, we're getting, I'd say nickel and dime, but that doesn't do it justice. I appreciate the time, Mayor Shea.
Thank you, Paddy.
Take care. Bye-bye.
We'll talk again soon.
Sure.
Maybe next week.
Sounds
okay.
Good.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Fogo Island Mayor Andrew Shea. Let's take our final break of the morning. When we come back, to the leader of the official opposition, the member for Stephenville Port-au-Port, has Tony Wakeham. Don't go away. Welcome back to the programme. Just a quick PSA for those folks who are considering going to the rooms this afternoon. It's closed. So some unforeseen weather-related matters. I'm not 100% sure, but they're aiming to have the rooms reopened tomorrow by 10 a.m. But today, it's closed. Let's go. Line number 1, sticking word to the PC member for Stephenville Port-au-Port. He's leader of the official opposition, Tony Wakeham. Good morning, Tony. You're on the air.
Hey, good morning, Paddy. I first want to start off, though, and say that my thoughts and prayers continue to go out to the residents of Churchill Falls. I lived and worked in Labrador for many years, and have no doubt that the residents of Happy Valley Goose Bay will rise to the challenge of supporting these hundreds of evacuees. And I also understand that some evacuees have made their way over to Lav City as well. And I pray the winds obviously will die down in the area, and urge people on the island portion of our province as well with this heat dome to be extra vigilant when it comes to fire safety. And so I just wanted to get that message out there. I know there's an update coming at 1, and I hope it's positive news.
Yeah, because someone has reported to me that the winds from the west continue and pushing the fire closer and closer, so I don't know what that's going to result in. And we know there's a small crew left behind at the hydro generating facility, and if it's getting dangerous, let's get them out of there. I know that comes with some operational concerns, but hey, we got to do the calculations.
Absolutely. Patty, I wanted to reach out today to talk about the report or the story that came out when it talks about children in care. And the report indicated, of course, that the number of staffed residential placements has not gone down. It's actually gone up in the last 5 years. And with that, of course, comes increased costs associated with that. And to hear the minister come on and simply say that, you know, it's the best model we have, well, I don't agree with that. And I think there are a lot of advocates as well, community advocates, and the Child Youth Advocate would have other suggestions. I mean, we've had reports done by Child Youth Advocate in 2019 and 2021 that highlighted issues with the residential placements, the staff training, and the need for family placements. And yet we don't know if any of those recommendations that have been made have actually been implemented. You know, we've talked about the need for early intervention and the idea of additional staff training. So all of these things are important components of making sure that we have the right system in place. And then we also think about the number of social work vacancies we currently have in our province, with over 100 social work positions vacant. Is that contributing to the increase in the numbers? So those are some of the questions that need to be answered. I don't think we have or should be satisfied with the current system. The minister again went on to talk about we're constantly reviewing. Well, what are the results of those reviews? What did those reviews show you? Where are the reports from those reviews? Do we know what we should be doing differently? We haven't received or heard anything of that. So it was a very dismissive type of response, and I don't think that that's what we need. What we need is to say and recognize we have a significant issue in our province, and we ought to be making sure that all of the children in our care get the best possible service or the best possible care that we can provide. And we've heard the horror stories about people, what's happening to people in care, and those are very serious issues. And I know this is a very complex issue, and there's no one easy solution to it, and no one individual has all the answers. But, we have people out there like the Child and Youth Advocate, and we have other community advocates, and we have had recommendations made. So where are those recommendations? Those are the questions that I think the minister ought to be addressing.
What I've been having a hard time finding, I know we're the only province likely that is approaching this concept this way, paying private operators to house and staff house some of these children. I mean, if we talk about 225 in level 4 care and the outcomes are not positive, to say the very least, I don't even know how they handled it elsewhere, which is I'm kind of been looking around to see if there's best practices that we can emulate or learn from, but I'm having a hard time finding what the strategies are elsewhere. Do you happen to know?
Well, no, that's exactly why, though. I point out to the recommendations being made by the Child and Youth Advocate. I mean, at one point, the Child and Youth Advocate talked about an audit process and reviewing that, and that was part of the thing that they talked about. The article itself talked about the fact that our province has the highest rate of children and youth with complex needs in the country.
Yep.
Do we know why this is the case? I mean, those are questions that we need answers to, and that the minister ought to be able to be talking about. But the whole idea of the solutions being offered around earlier intervention, which we know works, the additional staff training, additional resources potentially for foster families, those are solutions that have been offered in the past, or recommendations that have been made. So where are they? What has happened, and why are we finding ourselves with costs going up and more people in our care?
I'd say it's going to be a really comprehensive task required to understand exactly how all 225, and talk about children in care, there's over 900. We're just talking about level 4 at the 225 number. So I would imagine there's 1,000 reasons as to why that is. And, adequately addressing all of them is going to be monumental exercise. But I really do think that there's a lot of this that can be dealt with when we talk about early intervention gets thrown around a lot. But if we get it right in pre-K and through K to 12, we can probably reduce the numbers. Whether we have enough staff psychologists in the school system, whether we have more guidance counselors, whether we have more attention to coping mechanisms, whether we have more attention to drug and alcohol use, and all these types of things which lead to some poor outcomes, then getting it right there probably saves us money after the fact. And that doesn't even include the fact that if you have a well-educated population, the ability to be gainfully employed and have a stable future is greatly enhanced because you had the proper education and given yourself the proper opportunities. So I hang my hat on that a lot, but I think there's something to it.
Absolutely, and I think, Patty, it's far past the time that we stop looking at education as a cost and start looking at it as an investment, because that's exactly what needs to happen, and we're not doing enough to make sure that we focus in on that, and that's something that I firmly believe in, and certainly something that I look forward to changing.
Yeah, I'm trying to give Drs. Burke and Goodenow, a fighting chance to get the educational accord work going before we try to get them on the program to talk about where we are, because I know this is early days, but that's going to be important. I really firmly believe we need to think about and talk about education just like we do healthcare. If we gave it the same focus, we'd probably do better on the healthcare front as well.
Well, that's exactly the point, and I'll go down to a recent conversation I had with a graduate of the education program who applied for 150 jobs so far in our province and has not received one response. Because apparently we don't start responding to filling positions until sometime in August, just before the school season starts. I mean, these are the things that we could change right now. If you have a graduating class of some 80 people, and I spoke to this lady about this, and she said of those 80, only 6 had been offered jobs so far, and 2 of them were out of province.
Yeah, that gets complicated. That's totally where we have issues like seniority kicking in and people choosing where they want to work, of course, because we do have a seniority-based issue regarding the NLTA, so that's why it drags on so long. I would suggest that we have a cutoff date somewhere in July for picking and choosing jobs. If there's some different issues that there's not a job posted until August, okay, but let's try to do better earlier. Same thing when we're putting out road contracts or tenders earlier. That's been positive. Let's just try to change the timeframes associated with the most senior teachers getting to pick and choose where they'd like to work. You've had the last word, Tony. We're off to the lunchtime news.
Okay, thank you, Paddy.
Thanks, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Tony Wakeham, PC member, Stephen Port, leader of the official opposition. Good show today. Big thanks to all hands who support the program, and we will indeed pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning, right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. Stay cool. Talk in the morning. Bye-bye.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.